Griffin, and if it's Friday, that means
It's a balmy Friday.
oh my gosh, it's the day we've been waiting. You know what's funny is I look out here, all the snow's melted, Stan.
Yeah.
At my house, none of it.
None of it is.
None of it.
You have a lot of shade at your house.
I live in the Hereford zone. We just live in it's like on a different planet than everything else.
It's like the militarized zone.
It really kind of is, yeah. But Stan is here, Chief Grand Poobah here at Press Box, Stan the Fan Show. It's good to see you, sir.
Feels like spring today, doesn't it?
I'm not going to go that far, but I get that in comparison. Although, again, I don't know what it is with my phone, but my phone won't just tell me the weather anymore. Like, I'm not the type of person that looks at the weather, but given how miserable it's been this week, I found myself looking at the weather.
Looking for some optimism.
And then I looked down at my phone today and said, 26 degrees. Then the next thing it said was, snow likely at 10:30.
Yes, I got that too.
What the hell is going on around?
Started snowing at about 8 o'clock this morning.
Where?
Snowing pretty hard in Pikesville.
Now it's not going to snow. Now it's not going to snow.
For about 8 minutes. Seriously, it was like about 8 minutes.
Still says it on my phone. My phone still thinks it's going to snow.
My phone told me you're fine.
Now we got a bit of an old-fashioned phone showdown going on around here. Who's telling the truth?
But I swear, 15 minutes ago, mine also said snow, and I was like, what?
What the hell is going on? It's a sunny day outside. What the hell's happening around here? All right, we got a lot to do on the program today. Coming up this hour, new top 100 prospect list from Baseball America, and a lot less Orioles representation than we've been used to in recent years. It's gone from. It's what it is.
Because they're signing so many free agents.
Anyway. J.J. Cooper, Baseball America, is going to join us a little bit later on. I am interested.
Coops. I call him Coops.
Oh, yeah, you guys are close.
Yeah.
He's about to become the next Mike Tirico. I'm a little surprised that their last couple of draft picks aren't in that conversation. You know, both Enrique Bradfield, Vance Honeycutt. But we'll talk about that with J.J. Cooper. Also, later on this morning, speaking of the Orioles broadcaster Ben Wagner is going to join us. He's going to tell us more about the upcoming.
Benny.
You got one for everybody?
Very tight, Benny and I.
He's going to tell us more about the Orioles Caravan, which is coming up. It's a Friday, so we'll talk to Bo Smolka. We will get his reaction to what we learned from the Ravens' end-of-season press conference this week, and we will continue to celebrate the life and legacy of our friend Bowie.
That's what I call Bowie. Bowie.
We'll continue to celebrate the life and legacy of our friend Pete Medhurst as Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuk joins us this morning. So all that coming up on the program today.
You were fairly good friends with Pete?
Very close with Pete.
I did not know Pete at all.
Very close with Pete.
Stunned when I read the news, though.
Unfortunately, we knew that he was kind of choosing. I don't want to say anything. But it made it no less. I mean, it's just awful. It's just awful.
Horrible.
And one of the most talented humans that I've ever come across. And
how old was Pete?
55.
55.
Insanely too young.
Very sorry to hear that, Glenn.
Chet Gladchuk will join us a little bit later on to help celebrate Pete. So all that coming up on the program today. On the hoops front last night, good news all around. Towson won at home. UMBC. The UMBC one was stunning. They were down 4 with 30 seconds left to Albany,
really?
And Albany was at the free throw line, and then just decided they didn't want to make a free throw again.
Albany?
Shout out, right? Appreciate that. And
it's a great strategy by Pat.
This was UMBC. This was
Jim Ferry.
Yes.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Pat Ferry. Yeah.
Jimmy.
All your buddies.
Very scary. They're
sure, right?
Yeah.
So they rally back, force overtime, and then win in overtime on the road at Albany. And then shout out the flu for weakening Illinois going into last night. And Maryland, desperate for a road victory. I mean, about as desperate as it gets. A lot being made this week about some comments that Damon Evans made where he was way more critical of Kevin Willard than you've ever heard him be about the road thing. And, I get it. You have to win a game on the road. You have to prove that you can beat something other than a corpse on the road. And while Illinois, yes, was bad, they were weakened by the flu bug. Still, when you get to the end of the year, And
It's going to be a ranked road win.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if Illinois stays ranked, and who knows? I mean, like the teams beyond like the top 8, no one knows. No one has any clue from week to week who's really all that
I
good.
think Illinois is pretty
But
good.
almost certainly will remain a quad 1 win on the road no matter what. And so absolutely had to have it. Julian Reese, phenomenal from the get. Recognized that their front court was depleted and said,
It was very aggressive last
"Oh
night.
my gosh, was he aggressive last night?" Derek Queen a couple of times. Like, it was really funny that they didn't, when they cut to the Fox Sports 1 broadcast, use some of the sideline footage of Kevin Willard, basically directing his comments towards Derek Queen, but like cutting out the part where he doesn't say, "Derek, stop shooting 15-footers." He says to the team, "Let's not settle for 15-footers." Well, that wasn't really a problem for anybody else. There was one guy that was an issue for. And then he did it again, and they cut to the sideline, and Kevin Willard was beside himself.
I was watching that game for most of the first half and probably the first 8 or 9 minutes of the second half, pretty close to the Maryland game.
Yeah.
And I just kept waiting for the shoe to fall.
Oh,
I just kept. So they're going to come back. They're still.
Well, I mean, they built up that 9-point lead early, and then
they did come back. Yeah.
Yeah, did get right back in it, and you're like, okay, yeah, all right, this is the way it goes. But yeah, to their credit, they asserted themselves, and everything went through the paint. Like they said, we have an advantage. We have these two guys. They're depleted up front. Let's not overthink this. Nobody says, well, like, oh, it doesn't count because they didn't have all of their guys. No, that's how you win, is you take advantage of where they're weak, and that's exactly what Maryland did last night. Now, to the point, as important and necessary as that win was, and it was wildly necessary, the truth is they didn't need one road win. They need to prove that they can win games on the road. Like, they need to
Sunday becomes another big game for them, a game they should win.
Yes.
Should be able to win.
Yes.
And we'll see.
100% at Indiana on Sunday. This is the reality is it can't just be, remember that time we won a road game?
Right.
That one road win is not going to change your resume dramatically. You
needs to be baked into their DNA now moving forward.
Yeah, it's hard because you already got 4 that have
You
gone
can
the
use
wrong
that
way.
line.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You've already got 4 that have gone the wrong way on the road. Yeah. And, the Oregon one, nobody's going to fault you over that, right? But, like, Northwestern and Washington in particular nobody's going to fault you for losing on the road to Purdue. But those 2 in particular are games that you absolutely should have won.
You got to win one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to win.
If you're sitting here right now 3-2 on the road in conference play,
right,
you're in great shape.
Yep.
You're in great shape. Those 2 games really are the reason why there's such consternation, and there was fear going into last night that this could be a team that could end up falling back towards the bubble of the NCAA tournament. This goes a long way to making sure that's not the case, but certainly when we were talking a couple weeks ago about this team maybe being a top 4 seed, there's a lot of work that would still have to be done to get back into that conversation. But still, all that being said, they got the job done last night.
Love to see them back in that like a 4-5 situation. That would
incredible.
be great.
But they got a lot of work.
They got a lot of work
to do that. They've got to get more quality wins, and they got to get more road wins.
Speaking of work, I'm a fan of Griffin.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. That means
Big
a lot.
fan.
It's
But-
never good when the conversation starts that way.
But if you are thinking of making a change, I just wanted to throw my hat in the ring.
Now, this is strange.
What is that coming from? What do you mean?
I mean,
I'm a
because
little-
I've gotten the word is out on the street that you're thinking of making a change.
Well, every now and then.
Who put this
and
out there?
I have to say, I'm not at liberty to really say Gary Stein.
What? Gary?
Yeah. Well, Gary wants.
If you would have seen the exercise a couple weeks ago where we tried to get him to figure out who. So this was a trivia. I'll give it to you. A trivia question at the bar recently. 4 Baltimore Orioles won multiple Gold Glove awards in the 1990s. Who were the 4 Baltimore Orioles?
In the 1990s?
Yes.
Hold on.
2 of them.
Roberto Alomar.
Boy. All All right, we'll see how you do with the rest of them.
I'd like to point out Stan was very much alive.
Yeah, correct.
In the 1990s.
Right. I was big back in the 90s.
You were. I agree.
I was not
in
born.
the 90s.
Don't try to defend yourself yet.
I'm gonna guess that Rafael Palmeiro.
Most certainly did. 2 for 2.
2 for 2.
And by the way, I don't know if those two are more
1990s.
tricky. No.
1990s. Bonilla didn't win anything. Bonilla?
I'm not giving you. You're not going to do the bit where you don't guess, but you try to get me to. You got to guess something. You got to. I'm saying nothing. I'm just.
Hold on, Mike Bordick.
No, not Mike Bordick.
Cal Ripken.
Of course.
Okay.
Cal Ripken won 2.
So I've got 3 out of 4 I've gotten correct.
The other one I will acknowledge is the trickiest, but ironically, it was the one I knew immediately.
Is it Brady?
No, not Brady. You just it's trick.
Was he only with the team 2 years?
Nope.
Devereaux.
You're just not thinking about the fact that this position also gets a Gold Glove award.
Oh, the pitcher.
Yeah.
The pitcher, Mike Mussina.
Yeah. Okay. You're just not thinking of that. That's what makes it a trick.
That's exactly right.
So,
thank you for giving me an out.
I'm like
And,
I
and
acknowledge
definitely
that.
and definitely changing the subject.
Right.
So you're not interested in me.
Ironically, when the question came up, I was just like, oh, the first 2 I named are Ripken and Messina. Like, Ripken and Messina are the obvious ones, and people are like looking at me like, Messina's obvious? I'm like, yes.
Yeah, Messina was very obvious.
Was absolutely. But so Griffin struggles, so I try to help him.
Right.
And I say things like, well, he was only considered one of the greatest defensive players at his position of all time.
Right.
Okay, played for the Orioles for a couple of years, was more known for playing for a division rival.
Mm-hmm. But you described him as somebody that played for the Orioles for a couple of years?
Yeah, 3 years.
You're talking about Alomar.
Yeah, Alomar.
Okay.
That's the one.
That's the one I
that's
couldn't
the one
get. I didn't get Alomar.
He didn't come up with Alomar.
If you said he spit on an umpire,
that would have been. I believe I pointed out there was some off-field controversy.
But that was on the field.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I then said his name starts with an R. His last name starts with an A.
Yep.
And he still.
I think I got it after that, didn't I?
I don't know if you.
I'm see the kind of producer I would make.
Yeah. Oh
right.
yeah,
I could have gotten that.
You could have gotten Roberto Alomar. That's true. We'll see. We'll see.
I love Griffin, and I'm firmly in his camp.
Yes.
I feel like you're the one that created the controversy. I feel like
there's no controversy.
I feel like you're the
there's
one
no
that
controversy.
created the controversy here. Also,
I like his mom too, and it would break her heart if suddenly this were to go away.
Or she might say it's time for him to do something.
Yeah, that could.
Or she might.
Like a real
could be a couple.
Or she might say, hey,
good.
Like Kyle's mom.
Go do someone's finances. Go get a real job. That might be the way that she feels about it.
You mean Paul Valley's wife?
Yes, that's exactly what Paul Valley's wife said. We're getting married. It's time for you to do something. He was like, all right, I guess. That might be the way that Griffin's mom feels about it. My wife gave up on that.
See, I have no such
exactly
problem like that. My wife lets me do pretty much what I want to do.
My wife's mother did give me those types of questions at one point when we started dating. She was like, so when are you going to get a real job? I was like, no, you don't understand. This is what I do. This is my vocation. Like, this is how I make my living. She was like, right, but like law school? I was like, I don't think that's coming for me. I don't think that path is going to be there. I think you're stuck with this. So, sorry. My wife, she knew better. She always knew better than to think that anything was changing. That was the way it was. Also, last night, obviously, we talked about the basketball. The bitter disappointment in the first Australian Open semifinal as what had been an epic first set between Novak Djokovic and Alex Zverev. Ends with Novak Djokovic putting a ball into the net in a tiebreak and then saying no mas. And
you got to wonder, is that potentially the way his career could end?
The way that he was talking in the post-match press conference probably makes you think that's not the case.
He doesn't want it to end this way.
But he did acknowledge, like, he doesn't know that he's going back to Australia. I mean, he's 37 years old.
Yeah.
Like, and it always was going to be far-fetched for him to be able to win a 2-set or a 2-week 5-set major championship.
Yeah.
Like what he was able to do at the Olympics last summer was really amazing, but it was 3-set matches over the span of
Right.
1 week.
Right.
For someone at that age to be able to grind through potentially 5-set and against the best players in the world, I still think it's shameful that Alcaraz has regressed. Like there's that.
Except for his body. Jeez.
Well, yeah, that part I agree with, but
is-
he's not the same player that he was.
No.
And you could see
Yeah.
in that match that Djokovic was impacted. He was limited, and yet
And
Alcaraz was not
couldn't
able to
take care
advantage of it.
of him. Yeah.
So this was always going to be difficult. It sucks that it happens in a semifinal. It's just no good for anybody. Like
But I was really shocked that the fans there started booing him. I mean, it wasn't disgraceful. It wasn't horrible, and most of it was probably sort of partial economics and partial wanting to
we
see.
paid all this money. To
Yeah,
come out
and
here
wanting to see a great match.
Yep.
You know.
So
But I thought Zverev handled it
let's
magnificently.
not say too many glowy things about Alex Zverev. He's a pretty awful person.
I don't know
So,
that.
yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
that.
I
But
know.
but I
It's-
will say that I thought he handled that just very
just not
well.
a good person, unfortunately, and that's makes it all the more bitter of a pill that Alex Zverev will be in the.
I talked to him though. That he loves Griffin. Zverev.
Wow,
Oh boy.
Why?
That's
Why?
not-
Why? Why does he do? Why? I mean, I guess.
so. Yes,
thanks.
the Australian Open final will be Alex Zverev, Jannik Sinner, and
What's he done?
who?
Zverev.
Violence towards women.
Okay.
That's not a good person. I guess I have the responsibility to say that he.
So he's like the Pete Hegsmith.
There are allegations that are made that I don't know. I believe that all these people deny and fight back about, but there's an awful lot of evidence that's been presented, and it's very hard to believe anything else. But I guess we do have a responsibility to say that these people deny these things. So that's what it is. But yes, Alex Zverev will face Jannik Sinner in the men's final at the Australian Open, and just a disappointment because, again, that was also the one that we were able to watch in America last night. Like, that was, you're up late, you watch some basketball, I'll flip over to the tennis, and, the tennis is, although the first set was like 80 minutes long. I mean, like, you did get a really long, crazy first set, but then when you're ready to settle in and watch a match, the match was over. So, unfortunately, both finals are also on at 3:30 in the morning, so not great for trying to view them this weekend. Maddie Keys and Arina Sabalenka overnight tonight for the women's title, and then, as I mentioned,
That's at 3:30.
3:30 a.m. Yes, just the absolute. There's just no way of getting around it.
Yeah.
You can't convince yourself you can stay up. You can't wake. Like
They
there's
should
no-
move the Australian Open.
right to America. I agree.
I think
Yeah.
New York would
Just-
be a good
They
spot.
could still
honestly.
play
call
the
it- they
Australian
could
Open.
still-
right, exactly right.
Like the moon landing.
We can like set up like a
There it
an
is.
outback.
fake stu-
yeah,
yeah.
exactly right. Do it in
Kangaroos.
the studio. Now you're onto something.
Yeah.
They're figuring out golf is better in a studio.
Right.
Why not make
The
tennis in
Australian
the
Open,
studio?
or-
Yeah. Now we're cooking with gas. We're working on something.
And
here.
aren't there some whip snakes in Australia?
I have no idea. I
If
couldn't
there were, they
possibly
probably.
tell
What do you think they'd sound like, Stan?
I don't know. Wow.
I'll give you a hint.
Very good. Very good. That's why you can't get rid of this guy.
You're
There's
right.
nobody
You're right.
does
How
a
could I-
whip
How
snake.
could I possibly lose that? How could I possibly lose that? All right. Anyway, Stan, you were back in action this week.
I certainly was, Ali. Yes.
You caught up with Chris Corman of the Baltimore Banner.
Chris Corman, Baltimore Banner, and while it's not on our platforms yet, I did Mary Drexler yesterday of
Problem Gambling.
Problem Gambling, and Jim Nolan, not like Joe Nolan, Nolan, Jim Nolan, Knowlin.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and he was fascinating. He's a recovering gambler who's one of their support people.
Okay.
And fascinating story as to his gambling issues and
How the help he was able to receive
Yeah.
in order to
Yeah.
turn it around.
Yeah.
Well, you can find those right now, Facebook.com. Well, you can find the conversation with Chris Corman, and then shortly you'll be able to find that conversation at Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Click on the videos tab. Go to YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline or PressBoxOnline.com/video, and all of Stan's shows are brought to you by the Costas Inn. All right, new top 100 list out for Baseball America as far as prospects are concerned, and just not the same Orioles representation that we've been used to in recent years. It's the nature of the business when you go through something like this, but a reminder that the cupboard isn't quite as full. 3 Orioles still on the top 100 prospect lists. And one of them, I don't know how much we can even really consider a prospect anymore in Heston Kjerstad. Joining us now to tell us a little bit more about the top 100 list and where the Orioles are at this point, he is Baseball America's editor-in-chief. Mr. J.J. Cooper is back with us now here on the program. J.J., it's Glenn and Stan here in Baltimore. It's good to chat with you as always. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Thank you for having me.
JJ, I assume that the way we say this is not like Baseball America hates the Orioles. It's just this was always going to come when you promote so many top prospects. You're not losing as many games and getting as high draft picks. This is kind of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I mean, basically you do the whole goal of this is it's pretty impossible to stay at the absolute top of the farm system rankings year after year after year, because there is a cycle to this. And as you graduate Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman and Jackson Holliday and Jordan Westberg, and we could, and Grayson Rodriguez, and we could just keep going down the list. But as those guys graduate, it's extremely unlikely that you're just going to plug in guys right behind them who are the same level of prospect, because the reality of it is Adley Rutschman was because, Adley Rutschman and Jackson Holliday are the kind of players you get because you were really bad you picked at the top of the draft. Well, that's not where the Orioles are now.
The 3 players that are still on the list: Samuel Basallo at 14, Kobe Mayo at 29, Heston Kjerstad at 81. Let me start with Basallo. Where are you with Samuel Basallo? Is definitely a catcher, is a high-level catcher, or really he's a bat that might be able to catch?
I think a lot of that is kind of dependent on – you have to look at the context of the team he's on. I do think – so if he was someone playing for someone other than the Orioles, I think he actually has a pretty good chance to catch. Like, I'm not saying it's like a slam dunk by any stretch of imagination, but if he was on a team that didn't have a clear long-term catcher, there would be a lot of incentive to say, like, we're going to work with him, we're going to keep working with him. If it means we delay his arrival, because he's really young, to get him further refined at catcher, we're going to do it. I don't see where the Orioles would have that incentive to be like, hey, we need to hold him back in the minors for another year and a half if that's the difference between him being a below-average defensive catcher and an average defensive catcher, or a fringe average defensive catcher. In the case of the Orioles, if his bat's ready, it's going to be probably more advantageous to say he's a every now and then catcher who can play first base or in the outfield and DH, but we're going to get his bat into the into the lineup, and that's probably that part is going to be ready, barring injuries, very possibly at some point in 2025. But if you said, is he ready to be an everyday catcher? That's probably not going to be ready in 2025, and may never be. We don't know, but may never be ready. But with that being something where a lot of these cases where if you have a player where the bat is going to be ready before the catcher's glove's ready, often the guy gets into getting moved because you want to get that bat in the lineup.
JJ, I know you do a lot with the prospects, but one player who clearly no longer a prospect is Adley Rutschman. But I'm wondering if you saw enough of him last year to have an opinion of what happened to him when he basically fell off the cliff the second half of the year.
I think he was hurt. Like, I mean, there was, I know there was some. I don't want to miss out on who it was, but there were a couple of people pointed out, like on social media and other places, did analyses and just kind of pointed out that there was this midseason point. I believe he got hit in the hand at some point.
Yeah.
Like he wore down. I think that catching is really hard, and Adley Rutschman kind of does have that mentality of like, I'm the leader. I'm going to be out there every day whenever you need me. He didn't kind of raise his hand and say, hey, I need some time to recover. I need some time to kind of pull it all together. I would not expect that we're going to see more of the second half of 2024 going forward. I just think he's better than that.
Well,
We've seen it, obviously, in the majors. It's not a question of, because he ever done it. He's done it. I think that was kind of more the aberration than the new norm by any stretch.
One of the questions, though, as a follow-up to Basayo, not that Adley doesn't like to be the leader, but he plays for a manager that's very sensitive to giving him his rest and DHing him at least like 30, 40 times last year. And the year before, he got him a lot of rest with James McCann because he trusted McCann so much defensively. So I think there is an opening for Basayo and Rutschman eventually to kind of not split it even in Stevens, but, Basayo catching 50 games and Rutschman DHing 50 games.
I would say that Basayo's going to have to come along a good bit further defensively before they're going to be ready to do that with him.
Okay.
It's possible, right? But I would say, like, it's even kind of tougher as a backup catcher to kind of get your glove to that level in the major leagues. And I'm not saying he's not going to, but I'm saying, like, that's going to be another challenge that he's going to face. But this is a good problem to have. But when we kind of look at this Orioles team and you say, okay, they have kind of this conundrum coming up of how are you going to get all these guys at bats? Because, okay, like with Kobe Mayo, long-term logically, maybe he ends up at first base, but it's kind of hard for me to imagine right now him pushing Westberg aside at third because Jordan Westberg's really good there. And Jordan Westberg's better defensively there than Kobe Mayo. And then you say, okay, well, if he's at first, he can first and DH. But as you know, DH is also somewhere where Adley Rutschman ends up a good bit of the time, where Heston Kierstead might end up some of the time, where Samuel Basayo might end up some of the time. So there still are kind of some of these, and again, these are good problems to have, but there are still some of these log jams here where I think that's something that's going to have to be worked out over the next year and a half.
JJ Cooper of Baseball America is with us on GCR, and it's funny because JJ, it sounds like I'm getting the answer to my next question, which is you are puzzled, are you as puzzled as some of us are about specifically the Heston Kjerstad plan, which is if you were moving on from Anthony Santander, understood, but bringing in Tyler O'Neill and sort of paying him enough that you kind of have to commit to him being close to an everyday player, whether or not that makes sense. What is the plan with Heston Kjerstad? Like he's not getting younger. He still qualifies for you guys as a prospect, which is kind of crazy. It just feels so puzzling what the plan is for Heston Kjerstad at this point.
He is. The thing I would say about this with Kjerstad is I don't know if Kjerstad has done enough to where you say, oh, you just clear the decks for him, right? If you can look at this and say, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be opportunities that arise, I just don't think that they felt comfortable. Kjerstad was fine. I mean, he was solid, in his brief stint in the big leagues again last year. But I don't think it was something where you say, hey, if this opportunity arises, no, we don't want to do anything to block Kjerstad. As you know, he's going to play this year as a 26-year-old. He's going to play the whole year as a 26-year-old. I would say at this point, and where our ranking kind of reflects this, he's not like the cornerstone piece. He's more of a very good complementary piece. And it does seem, at the same time, it does seem like, yes, they did bring in O'Neill, but there still is kind of this clear path, I would say. If we look at the outfield, we look at Cowser, we look at Kjerstad, We've seen, Austin Hayes is now gone. Anthony Santander, or at least he's still out there, but he's gone right now. Anthony Santander is gone. There is finally kind of this opening up of this transition from the Orioles outfield for multiple years to kind of the new outfield. But I do think kind of part of this is figuring out how all these pieces fit together, and also fitting, again, I would say also that we still, you mentioned with Messiah, we still mentioned with Mayo, like there are guys where you're like, their long-term defensive home isn't yet 100% clear.
Sure. I think the bigger concern that a lot of fans have, JJ, is that I'll throw Connor Norby's name into this conversation, Kjerstad, that perhaps without there having been a plan to say this guy is going to sink or swim, and to your point, I can understand that argument. Should there have been more of an aggression earlier on to try to trade these players when their value was high, instead of getting to the point with Connor Norby where you say, well, he didn't have a role for us and he was getting older and we just kind of had to trade him at that point. Is it a mistake that the Orioles have seemed to hold on to some of these guys without committing to, we're going to get the answer about them in our organization come hell or high water?
This is the challenge that is the transition from being bad to being good, right? Which is, I follow what you're saying. And again, I don't think Connor Norby ever had extreme value. You could argue that they could have gotten more for him a little bit.
Right.
But at the same time, he was never a guy who was going to be a guy who brings you back a cornerstone player in a trade. If you compare him to a Joey Ortiz, the difference being is Connor Norby always had questions about where he's going to play defensively, right? Is he a second baseman? Is he a corner outfielder? That's different when you've got a guy that's he can play short, or he can play third, or he can play second. Kind of the same thing that we're talking about here a little bit with Kjerstad as well. These guys who have a little bit more of a lower down the defensive spectrum, more defensive questions, often don't get the same level of return as a guy who can play shortstop, especially, or a guy who can play a really good second base defensively, or can play a really good third. If we're talking about, to give another example of this, I would say that Kobe Mayo has obviously been probably a little bit more of a famous prospect than Jordan Westburg kind of coming up. But now that Westburg has shown what he can do in the majors, I would say at this moment, if you said which of them, Westburg's still young enough in his major league career, that you said, hey, both of them are, we're going to have to clear this logjam. Both of them, we're going to look at what's available out there. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Westburg had more value, because if you look around the majors right now, there are teams who still are at this moment man, if they just had plug them in, second baseman or third baseman, especially if you've got teams who are man, if they just had a better shortstop, what would that do for them? And there just aren't many of those guys available in free agency, things like that. So the challenge is that they didn't ever have a time where they could just say, hey, we're going to give Connor Norby 200 at-bats to show what he can do, because they were trying to win the AL East. It's different than when you were, when the Orioles were winning 65 games, where you're hey, this is an open audition and we can give players time. We can figure out what Anthony Santander is. We can figure out what Ryan Mountcastle is. We can figure out, he can't play third. Okay, well, where are we going to eventually, he's going to play first now. They had those opportunities. Those don't really exist now, because this is a team that needs to win now, and by the way, needed to win last year and needed to win the year before that.
I'm not saying that Heston Kjerstad, in my mind, was ever a top 10, top 15 prospect, but last year, where did you guys have him? Because I'm troubled a little bit where he dropped this precipitously from some of the things last year, the pipeline or something, where I saw him in the low 20s to being 80 now. I get that he's not the new.
We've never had him that high. We had him 62 and 21 before all the myocarditis and all. He didn't rank in 22. He did rank in 23.
Okay.
He went up to 41 coming off of that really good 23 season, and he's back in the 80s now. So, we've never had him, as a top 25 prospect in the game, in our view. And part of that comes back to, obviously, there's nothing he or the Orioles can do about it, but that missed time does mean kind of he's not going to be as young as some of the other guys that we're kind of comparing him to. But the other thing I would say with that is he's always kind of been, again, if you are a corner outfield / bat, it's always going to be more challenging. The expectations are a lot higher. If you're comparing him to a Colton Cowser, right? Like a Colton Cowser, the difference is that with Colton Cowser, you're saying, okay, this guy can play center field. I think actually he might be even a little bit better in center field than he is in the corner, but he can play center field. And if you put him in a corner, he should be a plus defender in the corner as well. That just makes you a more valuable player in general. That puts less expectations, less need on your bat than it is if you're saying you're a left fielder who also could DH.
Two recent first-round picks of the Orioles that have not broken through the top 100 list, Enrique Bradfield and Vance Honeycutt. Can you just give me a thumbnail on those two guys and what you think of them as prospects, even though they haven't been elevated in the top 100 status?
Sure. With Bradfield, I would say I would be shocked if Enrique Bradfield isn't a useful big leaguer. I mean, his defense, his speed, all that is going to, at the minimum, carve him out a solid role. Really, the question is going to be, okay, how his range of outcomes really do depend on the bat, right? You know that you're not talking about a guy who's going to be a premium power hitter. That's not his game. That's fine. If you're an 80 runner, I don't expect that out of you. But he's going to get on base, he's going to steal bases, and he's going to play plus defense in center. I think of him as kind of a perfect fit for what the Orioles could need in it, even at some point this year, but especially a year beyond that, where you're like, putting him in center is just going to make them better defensively. And it's also going to potentially mean that you look at other positions and say, okay, now can Colton Cowser kind of give you, obviously we know, even with the changing, moving the fence in, it's still a very expansive park. So then you're playing potentially with multiple kind of center field types out there, which is really useful if you're the Orioles. So I think he hasn't broken through as a top 100 prospect yet because it's kind of more of a guy who's right. I would say he's in the 100 to 200 range right now. With Honeycutt, now Honeycutt is a guy who I would 100% say has a higher ceiling if it all comes together than Bradfield, right? Mm-hmm. Because in Honeycutt's case, you are talking about a guy who could hit for power and steal bases and get on base and hit for average. The question with him it's always been with Vance Honeycutt, is he going to hit for average, right? Like, he struggled with that for 2 of his 3 years at North Carolina, a lot of strikeouts. He only hit 300 1 of his 3 years at North Carolina, which, if for someone who does not follow in college baseball, we have 400 hitters in college baseball right now, right? So hitting under 300 in college baseball right now makes you a below average hitter as far as contact, hitting for batting average. His on base has always been good. He does draw walks. And we saw in a very short stint, we did see a little bit of the similarities of that when he made his pro debut. Honeycutt's absolutely a guy who, if we're talking a year from now, wouldn't shock me at all. If you say, like, if he's paying attention, like, during the spring training and the season, and if you're reading stories, hopefully at baseballamerica.com, talking about how these tweaks that Honeycutt's made to his approach, these tweaks he's made to his swing, and now he's making more consistent contact, everything else is there. This guy's a great athlete. He's a good defender in the outfield. When we talked about Kierstead and how he's a little bit more limited, this is a guy who could be impactful defensively, could be impactful on the base path, and has real power. This is a guy who's got a lot of tools. We just need to see him, if he's hitting 220 with a 310 on base, that's not going to make it work. If he's hitting 250 with a 330 on base, then all of a sudden all of this looks really good. So that's where we need to see a little bit more of how he progresses as a pro before he's going to crack a top 100.
JJ, a quick question, not a quick question, a question about Orioles, Mike Elias, and his philosophy on pitching. Do you think he's done a disservice to the organization in terms of not drafting? I'm not saying using the capital of a 1-1 or something like that, but taking more pitchers, throwing more against the wall to try and develop pitchers. Because other than his acquisition of Bradish, his acquisition of Eflin, his acquisition of Burns, and his acquisition of Povich, He's done very little at developing any pitchers here.
I would say, like, there are different teams that kind of they know what their strengths are, and they kind of go to their strengths. And I think the Orioles know that one of their strengths. I would say that there's kind of a double-edged part of this, right? On one side, I would say that the Orioles feel very comfortable about their ability to evaluate and develop hitters. And that's generally, I would say if you wanted to criticize that, you could say, man, they take a lot of college outfielders, and some of them worked out and some of them haven't. But I would say it's kind of really hard to look at how the Orioles have drafted over the last 5, 6, 7 years and quibble with it too much, because when they drafted at the top, they've almost – their hit rate is very high, right?
Yeah.
If you go Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson at the top of the draft, that's an all-timer. If you go Kierstad Westberg the next year, I don't know how you can complain with that. If you go Jackson Holliday, Dylan Beavers, okay, Beavers is not, but Jackson Holliday is already in the big leagues. Bradfield and Mac Horvath, who they've traded, like, okay, that's not as good, but also they picked 17 and 53.
Right.
So, yes, you could say that they are a little thinner pitching. The other part of that, though, is what I would say is the Orioles also have shown a lot of confidence in their ability to basically kind of develop pitcher finds, right? Like, they've done this pretty well as far as, especially if you look at the bullpen, right, where they've kind of turned spare parts, cast-offs and all. They turned Jorge Lopez into something, someone who was good and that had value. And then they turned around and traded him and replaced him with someone better. And then, they've been able to do that. I would say that the fair criticism with this, though, is like, if you look at where the AL is right now, and it's still the season's not here, right? The Orioles could still swing a trade, make a move where all of a sudden their starting rotation looks better. But right now, it does still feel a little thin on the rotation side. Yeah. And it's kind of something where I would say the bigger picture thing, and again, that stands out here is we were wondering, okay, are the Orioles going to flip into spin mode at some point? And so far, we have not seen that, right? I'm not saying they didn't make some astute moves last year, the Corbin Burns, there's been moves they've made that cost some money and all. But at the same time, if you thought, okay, now that they've got this young core here together, now if they just add some pieces from the outside, it'll kind of find that next gear, that next level. They haven't done a lot of that yet. And the question is okay, is this, one of the things I kind of look at with that, I'll ask you, you're there, you're in the market, I'm not. The attendance in the postseason last year kind of surprised me. Like, I know it was, I know it wasn't the best time of day, it was like all that, but there weren't a whole lot of non-sellouts in the playoffs. But
in that wild card round, there actually were a lot of non-sellouts in the playoffs. It was mostly non-sellouts, in fact. But
right, but I kind of just but that kind of surprised me. And when I look at it now, I do wonder how much the market being split between now DC and Baltimore. It's the first time the Orioles have really been good.
Right. JJ, I'd say that wasn't really it. It was the game times are bad. The weather was awful in Baltimore those 2 days, and the team had really stubbed their toe. And the trend was very bad in the second half. The excitement just wasn't there.
There wasn't
for this
a lot
team
of excitement coming down the wire.
Yeah, they were really bad down the stretch and kind of got in anyway. So I know what you're saying. I just don't know that that's a factor in whatever decisions they're making. And if it is, I think that's kind of crazy. But I get it. JJ, I really appreciate taking the time for us. We're going to, of course, direct everybody to the top 100 in baseballamerica.com, where you should be subscribing, and at JJCoop33 as well on Twitter, of course, is how you follow him. Oh, sorry. Thank 36. You. I apologize, JJ. JJCoop36.
No problem.
Give him a follow.
That's from just too long ago, but it's a Jerome Bettis homage.
Oh, God, now get out. We
Fans.
take back everything good we ever said about you.
I was going to say,
take it all back.
Hey, congratulations on the season, but for Ravens fans,
but
the
Steelers.
I can go on that.
All right.
Did that make you feel good, JJ?
JJ Cooper. Appreciate you.
I'm sincerely saying congrats on the season. Y'all were, the Ravens were better than the Steelers. There's no question about that.
That part is true. Great.
That.
Got that going for us.
Year. And man, I wish that the Steelers had a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. I really do.
We're grateful they don't. Yeah. May that continue forever. In fact, JJ, thank you, brother. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you all.
It's JJ Cooper from Baseball America with us here on GCR.
Is he in Pittsburgh?
I thought he was in North Carolina.
Okay.
Honestly. I thought that's where he was based out of, but maybe
Steeler fan.
Yeah, I don't feel. Yeah, he's based out of Durham.
No reason to hate him.
Yeah, right. Like everything was going fine, and then I don't mean to get like uber I think JJ is really an intelligent person. I just don't think that there's anything to the.
He admitted he's not in the market.
Yeah, nothing there. Yeah. And again, like I get a little bit defensive about it, but it's a little bit. I would, of course, everybody would love for all of the seats to be full for every playoff game. If it was the first time the Orioles were in the playoffs, it would be alarming. Yeah. If it was the team had been red hot down the stretch and look, then it would be alarming. But we all know what was going on that week.
And I don't think we're ever going to see in baseball any longer the numbers of season ticket holders that have
that's probably true
season
too.
ticket full season
they
tickets.
also haven't made and we talked about this before, the wild card round has not become, like when he says, hey, most of the playoff games were sold out. Most of the rest of the playoffs were. Yeah. But that wild card round, it looked about like this.
Comes about very quickly.
Right. And is it really the playoffs? Like we just haven't, as baseball fans, we don't feel anything. If it was a one-game playoff the way that it had been in the past, electric.
But I agree with you. Had the Orioles had a hot September, I think we would have seen those games sold out.
I think there's no doubt about it. Don't think there's any doubt. All right. Today's show is also brought to you by the CIAA tournament. I know you were down there for the press conference this week, Stan.
Yes,
exciting times. There. Griffin, you want to remind everybody?
I would love to. Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament back to CFG Bank Arena this February 25th through March 1st. Tickets are available. You can get them now at Ticketmaster.com. Again, for the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena, February 25th through March 1st.
This man's been joining us every Friday throughout football season. Unfortunately for the Ravens, this will be the last regular Friday, and then we'll just do this as news warrants moving forward. But always appreciate our friend Bo Smolka, Pressbox Ravens beat writer, joining us here on GCR. Bo, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
We're all right. Bo, you do one of these end-of-season press conferences, and the challenge is always, hey, what do you parse out of the lot of nothing that they're going to say? And it's interesting because the only thing that I really parsed was Brandon Stevens is not going to be a Baltimore Raven moving forward, which I think most of us expected anyway, but that felt like about as direct of an answer as you could possibly get from the Ravens in this setting.
Yeah, when Eric DeCosta says we expect him to test the free agent market, I can think of a few other guys he said that about, and every single one of them left.
Yeah,
seems to be the indication that they're not going to re-sign him before free agency, and you can bet they're not going to sign him in free agency. So they move on from him. And then someone will pay him because he's an NFL cornerback and they get paid.
Yep.
And they'll look to they'll move on from that. I mean, he's done a good job for them. I know he backtracked this year, but he's been a steady player for them. But yeah, that's one of the more definitive things they said. Eric DeCosta acknowledged they've got a situation on their hands at the tight end position because of all three of those guys coming into their last year of their deals, Andrews, Likely, and Kohler. And how they play that over the next 12 months will be interesting to watch.
I think,
hadn't.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating how that plays out because I I believe them when they say they would like to keep a strong tight end room. I don't think that they have any interest in moving on from Mark Andrews in a vacuum. But
well, with so many picks this year, wouldn't you think one of them somewhere in the 4th to 6th round is going to be a tight end?
I just think that they're in a point where they are going to have to pay Isaiah Likely like a top tight end in the NFL because he's that good. And does that make them say, well, we can't pay both of these guys as top tight ends?
I mean, it's going to be. You're right. It's going to be fascinating. Mark Andrews is coming in the last year. I think he's in the neighborhood of like $16 million on the cap number. I don't have it in front of me, but it's a big number. And I think back to when they moved on from Todd Heap, and that was highly unpopular. Now, Todd Heap was a little bit older. He had already been here, I believe, 10 years, and he was, I think, 32. And he went to Arizona for his last couple of years. It feels like Andrews isn't at that stage of his career yet. But it's a big number they've got to knock around, and you're right. Likely's going to get paid, and probably will be by this team. I keep thinking of Steve Bisciotti's.
What will he command, Bo? Likely.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at some of these other tight ends. Honestly, right now, I'm not sure, but I go back to thinking of Steve Bisciotti. I think it was maybe with Lardarius Webb or back when we used to talk to Steve Bisciotti, and he talked about how he directly said he feels the value is in paying ascending players. That was the phrase he used, ascending players. And Isaiah Likely is exactly an ascending player. So I think that's the kind of guy that Steve Bisciotti looks at and says, yes, that's the kind of guy we want to pay. So I do think and then it becomes a question, are you going to pay both of them? Does Mark Andrews, do you try to extend him and lower that number for the next couple of years because of what he means to this team? And honestly, it's just so fascinating now coming off the game that he had, but I don't think they will make decisions off that one game. But, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting thing to watch.
Bo, the other obviously big storyline for the Ravens is left tackle, and it's funny because I was talking to Cordell yesterday, and he thought he was parsing that maybe they were calling their shot that they're not going to pay that type of money to Ronnie Stanley. I thought that the answer was a little bit more genuine in that, like, I don't know that they know yet how this is going to go, that there is a number where maybe they simply say we just can't do that for someone that has been through so much injury-wise that it's impossible. But I didn't sense that the response was we want to move on from Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought that was a little bit different than the tone with Brandon Stevens. But if you're Ronnie Stanley, and I haven't talked to Ronnie Stanley a whole lot this year, but if you're Ronnie Stanley, you basically were told by this team to take a huge pay cut and prove it, which he did. But now it wouldn't be – I can understand Ronnie Stanley wondering what else is out there and looking around and maybe not feeling a whole lot of loyalty for the team that told me to cut my pay in a big way to come back and show that I could still do it. So I do. I think the Ravens would be more open to having him back, but I also think – there will be a number. It's the way it always is with these guys. What's the number that we're willing to pay? And Stanley, what is Stanley going to go out and look for something more, which he might get? But again, at his age, at his injury history, I don't think he knows what's out there for him. I don't think anyone really does yet, and that's what will show up. But let's face it, capable left tackles get paid. Yep. And it only takes one team to really that has a lot of cap room that sees potential in him, 2 or 3 more years of production. That will give him something that the Ravens would not match. And if that happens, then the questions become, is Rosengarten your left tackle? Are you trying to find another left tackle? Then, yeah, I mean, because to Ronnie Stanley's credit, he was asked to take a pay cut. He had a prove-it year, and he proved it. He had a really, really good year, and they are not here without him.
What's his age now is what, 31?
That sounds about right. Again, I'm not home right now, so I don't have it in front of me.
He'll be 31 in March.
Okay.
Yeah. So and this was the first year he's played every game. This was the first year of his career he's played every game, and quite frankly, I can only think of maybe one practice he even missed all through the summer and fall. He never took vet days, none of that. So that was also notable this year. But yeah, his first season all year, he hasn't missed a game.
Bo Smolka, Pressbox Ravens beat writer, is with us here on GCR. Bo, I guess, the only other kind of scenario, I assume there's no world. They've got to get Marlon Humphrey's cap number down, but I can't fathom that they don't figure out a way to do that, and they don't make that one of their first priorities for the offseason.
Yeah, I think so. He's another guy that I think, Marlon Humphrey was a guy that more than anything himself was down on the way he played last year, and he came back superbly, especially if they're going to lose Brandon Stevens, which it sounds like they will. I think Humphrey's the guy they don't want to go anywhere. And we've seen them do this. I think they'll get his cap number down, whether it's adding a year or two, or they can make some things happen to make that cap year come down. I think Humphrey will be here for the duration. But I think they'll figure out a way to make that number lower.
I also assume that Pat Ricard, I think they'll let Pat Ricard look at the market. I just don't think that there's like a robust market for fullbacks out there. And, if there is, then I think Pat Ricard's gone. If it's what I expect it to be, then I think that it'll be much like every other time Pat Ricard's been a free agent.
I think so, like you said. And Eric DaCosta pointed out as well, they've already re-signed him 2 or 3 times.
Right.
And so you're right. There's only so many teams that even use the position, which is how I asked Eric about that the other day. Pat Ricard told us he wants to retire as a Raven. If it were close, I think he would stay here. I'm not saying he's going to give some huge hometown discount, but he wants to be here. And you're right. I don't think there's a lot of teams that are going to even be throwing money at fullbacks. A lot of teams aren't even going to be considered signing a fullback. So the number of teams that needs one or would want one is limited anyway. I would think, and the way the Ravens want to play, Patrick Ricard is perfect for them. So he certainly has as much value here as he has anywhere. I think that's one that they'll figure out.
And remember, where else is he going to get that extra Pizza Bullies money?
Right, that's the important. That does make the difference. There's no doubt about it.
He said playing with Derek, and again, you see these guys the day after the game, and he said this was his most fun season he's ever had, playing with Derrick Henry and all this. So, the guy wants to be here.
Yeah.
I don't think, you hear that from people from time to time, but I do genuinely think he does. And this is I think the perfect fit for him. I think both sides will find a way.
I've been of the belief that Pat McCary is likely the next, Raven whose value just gets so inflated that he's gone, right? Like that somebody just overvalues and says that we got to have that guy. Now, maybe that's different if, for example, they can't get something done with Ronnie Stanley. They turn around and say, hey, we don't really want to have the significant turnover that we had last year. We'd like to have a little more continuity. But I've just kind of operated around the idea that, like, he's in line to get paid. Somebody's going to have a lot more cap space, and they're going to eye up Pat McCary, and he's probably going to be gone.
That's my sense as well. And, again, one of the things is these guys – Patrick McCary's case – if they figure they're going to juggle this line and he's going to be somehow fall back into being number 6 swing guy, which was a role he was very good at, but I'm not sure he ever really loved it. He wants to be a starter.
Right.
And so he did end up being a starter this year. If he were to be a situation where, and again, these teams have a lot more money to burn than the Ravens do. And if a team comes to him and says, you're going to be our starting left guard, or you're going to be our starting right guard, guaranteed, nice money, yeah, I think he would go. And I think, I wouldn't blame him for going, but I suspect that that's what will happen.
So, Bo, what should the Ravens this is the problem is it really does feel like it's boring to me. And Stan and I are going to talk more about this in the 11 a.m. hour. Like, I just think it's you try to keep as much of this core together and you try to put yourself right back in this position. I don't think that they have gaping holes. They'll need another outside cornerback. Although I think that they expect Nate Wiggins, who we saw good things from this season, to come along a little bit more. They could always use more edge rush because every team can use more edge rush, but I don't think they're trading for Myles Garrett or something along those lines. Like, what does this look like other than taking care of their own internal issues? What else do you think this team needs to do to try to change the reality of their fate in the postseason moving forward?
That's the frustrating thing because the roster as constructed was built and could have done it. They just did. It was a good enough roster to go all the way. And the free agent, the list of free agents this year is not as harsh as some years. They're still going to be a good team. And I know a lot of people use the phrase run it back. Yeah, they love to run it back. They can't run it back with everybody. But in terms of their list of free agents, guys they're likely to lose, it's not nearly a daunting list as some years. And so, yeah, I think they'll be looking for another edge rusher. I think the offensive line, figuring out what's going to happen with that left side of the offensive line is probably one of the bigger priorities. But you figure you've got assuming you're going to keep Derrick Henry again, which I can't imagine they won't. If the running back situation is set, your quarterback is set, you've got Bateman and Flowers as the top of your receiving group is set. Your tight end group, I mean, it's a good offensive roster. The left side of the line is the biggest issue. I think on the defensive side, you mentioned, they got to replace Stevens. I think they'll look for another safety so they can do something Hamilton can be more than just a deep guy, although he was so good deep. I think he's also still really good near the line of scrimmage. So I think they'll look for another safety for sure. And, you'll want more edge rush because I don't know how long the fountain of youth is going to shine on Kyle Van Noy. And, David Ajabo still didn't become that guy yet. So Tavius Robinson flashed on the outside. But you're always looking for more edge rush help. But you're right. It's a roster that going into an off season, there are fewer kind of glaring holes than other seasons, which is nice because they already had a really good team and a really good roster. And like I said, they had a good enough roster to win it all. And the maddening thing for fans is they found a way to lose it again. More than just getting beat, they found a way to lose it. And that's frustrating.
I will run this by you to wrap. My theory, if there's a lesson from this one, my theory is they have to learn to be more boring. That you watch what the Bills did and how willing they were to be conservative as that game went on and to play in the circumstances. And you watch what the Chiefs have done for a few years now, where they have the most generational talent maybe of all time at quarterback, and they just say, we don't really care if he even gets like a Pro Bowl nod. We're gonna play less or more risk-averse football. I just wonder if that's the lesson for the Ravens, that like, hey, we all know Lamar Jackson's capable of picking up a bad snap and running it or throwing it for a touchdown. He just did it against the Bengals earlier this season. We know he's a one-of-one talent, but is the next lesson for them, but you can't be that same team in the postseason that you are in the regular season because the cost of something going wrong is dramatically higher.
Yeah, I mean, on Jackson's fumble, on the scramble fumble, he just dropped the ball. I mean, that the one thing is that's who he is. He's always trying to extend a play, and he just lost the ball in the cold, and that happened. On the one, I think the turning point in that game to me, and I said it at the time, was getting held to a field goal on 1st and goal at the 2. Yep. And I asked John about that this week, and he said basically they ran a run for play on 1st down to Derrick Henry. The Bills ran this run blitz. Henry's running right into it, and they stonewalled him. And he said, if they're going to do that, we could run Derrick Henry 3 times right into that. It's probably not smart. That's what John Harbaugh said. What I didn't know until he told us at the thing was that on 2nd down, their play was this trick play where they were releasing Ronnie Stanley on a tackle-eligible pass. You talk about taking a risk. Now, that was a play that they thought, as John said, if that works, he's wide open. It's genius. If it doesn't work, everyone's like, what is that? The Bills, to their credit, didn't lose Ronnie Stanley. They covered him. And so the play's not there. Jackson gets sacked, and now you're out of Derrick Henry's situation. It's now 3rd and goal at the 8, and the drive ends up at a field goal. I just think that was such a humongous turning point in that game. And you can go back, as John said, you can go back and backtrack all the play calling, second guessing you want. Should they have been more boring there and just plowed Henry? Honestly, I would have, but I understand what he's saying. They're lining up 9 guys there. I don't think the Bills are stopping Derrick Henry 4 times when he needs 2 yards myself. But I see the point, and it's an interesting thought you have there to just be more boring. I think the Bills did exactly that. I think the Bills decided we'll just play conservatively and we'll hope the Ravens make a mistake. And they did.
Yeah. Bo, the coaching staff, the dominoes are starting to fall with Pete Carroll reportedly going to the Raiders and what's his name, Aaron Glenn going to the Jets. Mm-hmm. Todd Monken's not going to get a head coaching job, is he?
Well, it seems to me not now. I mean, I said the 3 that I know of with him were the Raiders, the Jaguars, and the Bears, and all 3 of them have been filled.
Yeah.
And so, it doesn't seem likely that there's any other openings going to be there for him. So, he in theory would run it back here with this team again. And this offense was terrific, and he did a great job here. But no, the Raiders I thought was the one that could come through there. He coached Brock Bowers at Georgia. He had a lot of connections, but no, it doesn't look like it now.
Do you see any changes on this coaching staff?
It's so hard to tell. I mean, honestly, probably. I don't know what they are yet, but there's just kind of shuffling that happens year to year. Assistant coach gets a chance to be promoted to a different higher spot at a different place. And Don Harbaugh's not going to hold him here if it feels like a promotion somewhere. Dramatic shuffle and dramatic changes, I don't really see it. Is T. Martin going off to be an offensive coordinator somewhere? I don't see it. The short answer is, I bet there will be some minor shuffling because there almost always is.
Yeah.
At B Smolka is how you follow him. PressBoxOnline.com is where you see his stuff. If you haven't read his story about our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Lamar Jackson, then go pick up the print issue of PressBox today at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of those hundreds of locations around town. Bo, great work all season long. We appreciate it, and as news warrants, we will be in touch in the coming weeks and months. Thank you for taking the time for us, as always, sir.
All right, you bet. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Bo.
Bo Smolka, PressBox Ravens beat writer, with us here on GCR. Yeah, as Stan points out, Pete Carroll. I have no idea why Pete Carroll would take the Ravens. Boy, that is about.
He's hungry.
That is desperate. Like that is.
You see the price of eggs? They're going back up.
I thought we were solving that. I am flummoxed by. I mean, maybe.
Well, he's got to be able to compete with Sean Payton and Andy Reid and.
Right.
Jim
Why
Harbaugh.
in the world? It made sense to get out of Seattle. It's purgatory. It's the thing I keep saying about Mike Macdonald. I think Mike Macdonald is probably a good football coach, but I don't know that he's ever going to have the opportunity to prove it. Because that is as purgatorial as it gets. He's in a situation where they can't be bad enough to get a number one pick and get a quarterback, but they sure as hell cannot be good enough to win with the quarterback that they have. It's purgatory. I have no clue. I guess if Pete Carroll's thinking long term, which seems strange to do at 73 years old, but
my mother used to say when she was about in her mid-70s, she doesn't buy green bananas anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, right? Like it's crazy to me.
It's a 3-year contract.
If his answer is, well, we'll probably be bad enough this year that next year we can draft a quarterback. Well, when do you think you can win with that quarterback?
Is there a record that he's coming up on, or
I have no idea. This is so bizarre to me that he would take that job.
He just misses the competition.
I mean, sure.
Okay, he's only 150 wins from the all-time record.
I don't think he's going to get there. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, if he goes 17-0 3 straight years,
right,
and knocks that down to under
then he's
100.
then he's
under 100.
Right, yeah. So
then
anyway,
he gets a 5-year deal.
Right. All of this.
I mean, he's only
very
he'd
likely.
He'd have to coach 8 perfect seasons. That's it.
That's all. That's all he'd have to do.
And what could go wrong in Las Vegas?
Right. I just don't know.
I've always liked Pete Carroll as a coach.
I like Pete Carroll, and that's why this is more bizarre for me. For the Raiders, hell, hire anyone. That anyone wants your job. What do you have going for you? What are you selling them on when they walk in?
A hell of a tight end.
That's what
you want
to
play for Mark Davis's son.
Al Davis' son. Mark
Al
Davis
Davis,
is the son. Yeah, but other than that, yeah. You see that bowl cut?
Yeah. You want to play for the weirdest looking guy on the face of the earth?
I can't imagine that pitch. The only thing you pitch is there's only 32 of these. If you don't get this one, you might not get another. And Pete Carroll clearly wanted the Bears job, so it might just be fine. This is a job.
Well, they get to play the Bears every year, so they
don't. What do you mean they get to play the Bears?
Oh, it's the
every
Raiders.
year?
Yeah, you're
What are
right.
you-
I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know
Maybe-
why.
Are
it
you
would take
having a stroke?
I don't
I
know
am
why
a
it would
little bit
take it.
worried about what's
Maybe-
going on.
was-
Maybe
that
at
was a
his
bit. It was a
age,
bit.
maybe at his age, he thought he had the Bears job.
That's what it was. You said it's Chicago, right? No, I said Las Vegas. Oh. Or maybe he just retired to Vegas. Maybe that's like he's here anyway.
Maybe he likes gambling.
Like it's this or play golf, and he's not much of a golfer, so I'll just go coach the local high school football team, which is about what the Raiders are. I am perplexed by choosing to coach the Las Vegas Raiders. There is nothing there. We come back in, we'll talk a little bit more about the demise of the Baltimore Ravens and what they do moving forward. Stands here. It is a Friday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at costasinn.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special Best of 2024 issue. On the cover, we celebrate our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Lamar Jackson, as Bo Smolka profiles what the quarterback means to the community beyond the football field. Also inside, we celebrate the top people, performances, and moments of the year in local sports. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always read the entire issue and find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Need a trophy or award that's as unique as the achievement? Look no further than Crown Trophy. With locations in Owings Mills and Gaithersburg, they specialize in custom trophies, plaques, and medals for any occasion. From sports and academic awards to employee recognition and corporate gifts, visit crowntrophy.com today and let them help you create a lasting memory for your school, team, or business. Crown Trophy is a proud supporter of the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association. crowntrophy.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
All right, back in here on GCRs, continue along on a Friday edition of the program. Stan the Fan Charles is in studio with us. Today's show is also brought to you by countysports.zone. Everything you need to know about high school sports, basketball moving towards the playoffs. You can find all the scores, the schedules, updates by going to countysports.zone. It's proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Stan, that's the only thing that I can come away with as like a lesson is be more boring. Be more boring. It's funny because I saw a clip of Dominique Foxworth was on one of these ESPN shows talking about how he thinks that part of why the country has kind of turned on the Chiefs is because they started, like when this all started with the Chiefs, they were a phenomenon. They were must-watch every game. You're going to see a magic show from Patrick Mahomes. We all think about that game against the Rams on the Monday night. That was like the best football game, most exciting football game we've ever watched in our lives, which ironically they lost. Like the Chiefs were just thrilling.
They were must-see TV.
And then post Tyreek Hill, they said, yeah, that's not the best way for us to win. We're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to play within
we've
ourselves.
Got Pat Mahomes, and we can
At the end of the game, he's going to make the plays that he needs to make. You know, we're going to not make mistakes. We're not going to commit penalties. But we're not going to score 38 points a game. We're not going to light the world on fire. We're just going to win football games and be the absolute best team ever in the margins of knowing what to do when the game's at stake and not screwing up and letting everybody else screw up. And we're just going to do our jobs and be kind of Patriots-like in that way. And so Dom says he's convinced that's why people have turned and soured on the Chiefs, is they've gone from this incredibly exciting thing to
like workmanlike,
robotic.
And just keep winning.
Almost soulless, just keep winning. Now, that's probably part of the story. I think a lot of people also are Taylor Swifted to death, and so that's part of the negativity that gets to
I mean, all those millions of people that go to see her play.
Those people are not. I think it's the people that aren't in that category that are just like, Jesus, we're still and then they that allows them to go into their conspiracy theories about officiating, things along those lines. But to me, that's the lesson for me is, okay, well, the Ravens need to be like that. The Ravens have been popular on a national landscape because they've been the team that's extraordinarily exciting to watch, that Lamar Jackson might do anything at any moment, and you have to watch every time they play a game because your jaw's going to be on the floor based on something that he does. And to me, if there's a lesson, it's we know you can do those things. You're going to have 3 MVP awards here in a month and nothing really to show for it. You got to figure out how to be more like that, how to be a little bit more boring and not require Lamar Jackson Superman, how to close the margins and just not screw up in these situations. And that's how you become a better playoff football team, is that you don't need it to be magic all the time. If there's a lesson to me to be learned, it's I think the Ravens need to be more boring.
Well, Gary Stein this year, Gary's doing the sports now every morning on CBM, so he's following everything a little bit closer. He got into about mid-season, or about 6-7 weeks ago, we had him on the show when your father-in-law passed away. And one day he said, the Ravens really need to have patience rather than perfection. That's really the lesson that John Harbaugh has to learn, is to just be more patient and not be so jumpy when he falls behind. And I think this is along those same lines, I still don't get – look, I love Derrick Henry. I think he's amazing. That first down call, to me, that's a perfect call. First of all, they were like not on the 1, like with a push. They were like on the 2, right?
They were on the 2. I don't know that you don't just do 4 pushes for the record.
Well, what I would have done would have been the fake to Derrick Henry with kind of a quarterback draw, where Lamar held the ball and somehow he's going to get another yard there. I just thought the Derrick Henry call on first down was too predictable. I either would have gone with play action and thrown the ball.
To be fair, that was the one that John Harbaugh said in hindsight, that was the play that we should have done this on first down,
right? Not
on second down. We should have run this. Again, I think that falls into a little bit too cute, this Ronnie Stanley thing. But like that, he said afterwards, if I were to do anything differently, I would have done that. We needed to throw the ball. We should have done it on first down when they weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
To me, boring is line up and do your. You're so confident this tush push is going to get you a yard every time you do it.
Yeah.
2 yards is 2 tush pushes.
Right.
Just go
and
do
they're
it.
Pretty unstoppable when Andrews moves over and takes the snap.
Worst case scenario, you get a half a yard on the first one.
Right.
And then you line up and you do it again.
Right.
And if you only get a yard on that and you're still at the half-yard line, then on third down, just do it again. And it's unwatchable as sin. It's people getting the football fans would hate it. And you would have 6 points to show for it.
Yep.
That, to me, is that was what we hated about Bill Belichick, is he always knew exactly what to do.
Right.
And it wasn't entertaining, and it wasn't fun, and there was no risk involved, and there was
they had parades.
But yes, they had constant
6
parades. And so to me, that's really, I know you might be right about that's a better play call, but I just Stick Mark Andrews under center on first down.
Yeah, right.
Look at the situation and say, we need 2 yards.
Right.
They know what's coming, but they know what's coming every time we put Mark Andrews under
center. I
just
thought
center.
they were predictable and too cute,
The too cute part, like that Ronnie Stanley play,
it's not the time to call that.
even if it works,
That's the type of call you'd make when you're 7 points ahead. Not trying to get the lead. Did you have a problem? You and I haven't really talked about. I would have gone for the 1 point on the touchdown in the second half.
I've thought about it with that deep in the third quarter. I think you have to.
Wasn't there 7 minutes left in the third quarter?
No, it was like 1:30 left in the third quarter. I think at that point,
I just felt we were going to get another opportunity.
I get it.
Now, look, we don't know for a fact that the Bills play everything the same way.
Right.
Had we been a 1 point lead instead of a 2 point lead.
That's where I'm at. Is that it's really easy to say it now, knowing what happened.
Yeah.
I'm
not a big 2 point conversion guy unless you absolutely have to.
My opinion has always been if you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in your backfield, you should. Like my bigger problem is that you ran a play where Derrick Henry left the backfield.
Right.
And it's easy to say, well, hey, it worked. That Isaiah likely was wide open.
Right.
But like, why are you ever announcing to the opposing defense
that
Don't worry
Derrick
about
Henry's not going to be a part of it?
This guy, this one-of-one alien,
Right.
you can go ahead and not think about him on this. Why would you ever do that? And I get that on the second one, there's so little time left that you probably aren't going to run a play. Like, you're probably not going to let the game come down to, can Derrick Henry run forward for 3 yards? But on the first one, late in the third quarter, when it's not defining the game, absolutely a Derrick Henry run, particularly considering he had just bowled you over the entire drive down, needs to be in the mix. Like we can always hide behind, hey, the play that they ran worked.
Right.
It just didn't get executed. But I would never, ever, ever, ever have a play that involves Derrick Henry not having to be accounted for ever in a 2 point conversion situation.
Totally agree with you.
It's asinine.
It's batshit crazy.
It really is. Yeah. Even though, again, technically the play call worked. Mark Andrews did make a statement for the first time yesterday after we didn't hear from him after the game. As I said then, nothing that he was ever going to say was going to make you feel any different. There was did I want Mark Andrews to talk so that he didn't have to get bombarded with the fact that he hadn't talked? Right. Yes. Was anything he was going to say? The best comparison is everybody always brings up, I was so impressed. Billy Cundiff stood in front of the media and answered questions. Has that affected anyone's opinion in this city of Billy Cundiff ever? I get that Drew liked it. Everybody that was doing their job that night liked the fact that Billy Cundiff talked. Has anyone else in Baltimore that wasn't in the locker room in Foxborough that night?
Billy who?
Yes. Have they cared at all that Billy Cundiff did is important to a small group of people? And I get it. Like, when you have a job to do, you want to hear from somebody. I really do. But for all of the rest of us, none of us think, well, hey, but Billy Cundiff did step right up and say, I missed the kick. Like, right, we all saw. We have eyes. We know. What is Mark Andrews going to... And he put out a statement yesterday. Great. All over the internet. Mark Andrews speaks. Sure. And nothing about the football game changed. And nothing about anything changed.
Nope.
Just put something on Instagram that acknowledges what we all know. It's such a weird world where we get obsessed with these types of things.
I'm glad he did.
Oh?
Yeah.
Because did you win a bet?
No.
Like, why do you care?
Because so you can move on. I'm happy for him, the person.
I don't think that allows it to move on either. Like, the next time Mark Andrews is in front of a group of like if he's here for if he's still with the Ravens for a mini camp, and reporters haven't talked to him, they're still going to hound him. Like, they're still going to be all over him that day. I don't know.
Yeah, and he would have. And if he had spoken Sunday night, they still would have in May.
That part I disagree about. That part, if you've addressed it, like, there'd be less of that. But people still want to get their pound of flesh.
Yeah, I don't see it being a big deal. Next training camp, what happened?
Oh, I think by the summer,
yeah,
it's gone. I agree with that.
Yeah.
it gets revisited in context.
I personally hope he's back. You know,
I absolutely hope he's back.
Yeah.
I do think it's a complicated situation that they face.
It is complicated.
Because Isaiah Likely is a star. Like, he is that type of player, and you don't want to run the risk of losing Isaiah Likely because he's going to be really good for a long. Or we think he's.
What would it cost to franchise him?
Likely?
Yeah, 18.
Yeah, I try to think of who the top 5. Kelsey. If Andrews is sitting at 16, Kelsey, Kittle. I guess Laporta hasn't gotten a deal, so he's not in that conversation. Right. But yeah, it's something. I'd say it's at least 15 to franchise him, but that's for the following year. Like Likely.
Oh, okay.
Likely's going in. The idea is that you want to get ahead of it,
right?
In hopes
by
that
signing, you can get him in a lower number.
You're hoping that, right?
Kelsey's at 17, Hawkinson's at 16.5, Kittle at 15, Goddard and Andrews both at 14.
So if it's an average of the top 5, then it'll be a bit more like 15.5, something in that neighborhood. I would like for them to be aggressive and try to get it done with with Isaiah Likely, but I hope that both of them are on the team next year because I think they're a really good football team with both of those guys on the team, and I think they got a great chance.
Taysom Hill still a top 10, just outside the top 10 tight ends. Yeah.
Taysom Hill?
Yeah.
God, that's crazy. All right, when we come back in, we've been celebrating the life and the legacy of Pete Medhurst all week long, and Chet Gladchuk, Navy Athletic Director, is going to share some thoughts about the role that Pete played. So we're going to do that when we come back. It is a Friday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino in Hotel Maryland, at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at DriveEasyMD.com.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCRs, continue along on a Friday edition of the program. We had to do this a bit earlier this morning, but we continue to celebrate Pete Medhurst as we catch up with Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuk right here on GCR. Well, we continue this week here on GCR to remember the life and legacy of our good friend and the voice of Navy athletics, Mr. Pete Medhurst. And joining us this morning here on the program, he is the athletic director at the Naval Academy. He is Chet Gladchuk, and he's with us now here on GCR. Chet, it's Glenn in Baltimore. I wish this wasn't the reason why we were chatting, but I appreciate you taking the time this morning to chat with us.
It is my pleasure, Glenn.
Chet, we use terms like, and I'll make a comparison. I'm the voice of Loyola, right? But I do the games. That's what I do. Pete was like spiritually the voice of the Naval Academy. I mean, it was you associated him with that place almost as much as you associated any individual with that place. Can you share a little bit from your perspective about what Pete meant, not just to football, not just to basketball, but to the entirety of the Naval Academy?
Well, Pete was very much involved with us even before we became, our lead man. With Navy athletics, we had Bob Sosi, who had been the voice for many, many years, and Bob left and went to the Patriots, and Peter worked with Bob, the two of them, and so you take a person like Bob Sosi, as I would put him in the category of a mentor, an inspirational mentor to Pete, and Pete just kept getting better and better and better, and he had that wonderful voice that projected so well, and the professionalism. And when Sosi left, Medhurst was the obvious. I mean, and my senior associate Eric Rudin, who really sees our broadcasting, television, all that, came to me and said, "Chet, what do you think about Pete?" And I said, it's a no-brainer. Pete's the guy. And then he started running with the ball. He had a kind of a limited role in the early going, but as the momentum picked up, he just kept getting more involved with different sports and podcasts, and he did our television, he did our radio, and that voice just became synonymous, over the last, 15 years of Navy athletics. When you heard that voice, or, checkerboard end zone, or the way he'd project every time we'd score a touchdown, his enthusiasm, it just resonated with an energy, that we were just so grateful because it was Navy athletics. And, Pete was clearly, the voice of what we represent. Intelligent, articulate, incredibly thoughtful, never for a loss at words. I don't know how many interviews I did with Pete over the years where, we never got, stuck, so to speak, on any moment over any topic. If there was a pause, he just had this grasp of of what's going on, and he'd just step right in and just lead the conversation in a way that it was always always enlightening, and it was always a positive experience for me and for anyone else he was with. A friend, an associate, a family member, a brother, a cousin, you name it. Pete was all of the above, and he embodied, everything we could hope for in an individual that carried our message into the community and beyond.
What you just said, the quality of human being that Pete Medhurst was, and I know it quite well as he was a close friend of mine and someone who always looked out for me in this business. But obviously it matters most what you are as a professional, but how much more significant was it for you, for the academy, for the athletics department, that Pete was such an incredible human being, and it was so easy for people who cared about Navy athletics to gravitate towards him because of that?
Yeah, well, I think that, with all due respect, Glenn, to you and many media, we get called all the time, and, there are questions, and, there's interest in various topics, and I think that, it's just only human nature whether it be an athletic director anywhere or a coach anywhere, there's, guarded a little bit in comments and careful a little bit about what you say and everything else. But that was never the case with Pete. Pete was, I mentioned it a moment ago, Pete was just pure family. The level of trust with Pete was such that no matter what you would say or no matter how you'd present it, if Pete felt as though that he needed to follow up with something to clarify it or to make certain it was in the right context, he just had this incredible, insightful way of making you feel comfortable, and making you feel as though you were talking again, to your brother at the kitchen table. And, he was responsible in the way he conducted his business. He was sensitive because it wasn't about just an interview where he was gathering information. Pete Medhurst was Navy athletics. He actually exuded, what we were all about. And no matter what the topic was, Pete would always just convey it in a way that was clear, effective, and he brought a level of comfort. And then that really, again, is what I said a minute ago about trust. You could just trust him because he was one of us. I actually often thought about, he ought to be, on the staff. He ought to be one of our people. He ought to be upstairs working with Scott Strassmeyer, really the voice of Navy athletics from the inside. But it was always more, creditable that he was on the outside, where if he had something to say, there was an opinion that made sense, but it was just due, he'd say it. He had that liberty, and I think that gave him also the credibility with our fans that, Pete's going to tell it like it is, but I'm repeating, we always knew from the inside out that he was a Navy man, and he would present it in a way that was beneficial, informative, but complimentary to the academy.
Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuk is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Chet, the passion that he had for Navy and how much he loved being, he would say constantly, not just publicly, he would say it in private conversation, I feel like I have the best job in America. How much did that mean, and how much do you feel like that transcended, that you knew how much he loved and how grateful he was for having that role and having that job?
He was us. That's the best way to put it. Again, I mentioned, you get news reporters or you get interview people that'll call you from the outside in. You talk to them once every 6 months or once in a while, and they're always coming from the outside in terms of their agenda, their questions. Peter was Navy athletics. Peter was the United States Naval Academy. Peter was ingrained in the fiber, of who we are. He's just an incredible human being that lived it, loved it, thought about it all the time. You could always count on him. He never missed an assignment. He came with great enthusiasm to every broadcast that he put forward, we had him on so many telecasts where he was the face and not only the voice of Navy athletics. He teamed up with some tremendous people in the industry, and he did more so than even Navy athletics, which brought even a higher level of professionalism in the way he presented himself and his insights. I tell you, Glenn, we were just flat out fortunate. We've had an era of Pete Medhurst that has been as good as it gets. And we've got, the next line is coming in, and we got some good people that are going to pick up the reins. But, in fairness, as much as we, are pleased with, those that come after Peter, no one will ever, fill his shoes. No one will ever project. No one will ever convey, as effectively as Peter did, because of the passion he had, for the midshipmen, the coaches, and again the academy.
I couldn't imagine saying that any more strongly, Chet. That is incredible. And I wonder too if it like little things like how much he would go onto other platforms and speak so glowingly about the academy. Can you quantify what that meant? Like, what did it mean for the coaches there that like they had that relationship? And in all the other athletes at the academy, can you quantify what it meant to everyone there?
Well, I think it goes beyond just Navy athletics trying to create visibility, in the public sector. We work on that every single day. I got a staff upstairs that's trying to make connections with you guys and, television and newspapers, and they're always working on ways to get exposure. Peter was like the liaison to credibility. If Pete Medhurst was going to speak about Navy athletics, it brought a higher level of credibility, interest. We got a lot more yeses, by everyone out there in the media land. When Pete was carrying the message, because of Pete, the way he'd present, the intelligence, the insight, the interest that he brought to a subject. It wasn't just a matter of fact presentation. Again, it was a passion that came with Pete's presentation that made it entertaining in itself. More so than even just the facts. He was a catalyst for interest and a credibility that came with Navy athletics that brought us, exposure and brought us, much broader awareness of who we are because of who he was, Pete Medhurst. I know he not only did he do the games, and again he did the interviews and the podcasts, etc. But he also did an awful lot with some of the major stations, around the community, kind of on the side, representing Navy athletics that never would have happened, if it wasn't for Pete Medhurst.
Oh, man.
In his, his presence, and Pete because he was Pete. So there's a dimension, as you point out, quantitatively that we're going to miss, because he opened doors that don't normally open because of who he was, and just everyone knew that if Peter was carrying the message, it was worth listening to.
Boy, I couldn't imagine saying it better. Chet, we are still reeling, and the thought of him not being here is awful. But I'm glad he got to go out with a lot of fun calling football again this season, right?
He loved it.
Man,
he loved football. He never missed.
No.
He never missed a game. He was, right there with us on the team playing. He, I don't know. Now you got me a little emotional.
I understand.
When I think about him.
I understand, Chet.
The travel and the relationship, but we're going to miss him. But we'll never forget him, and we're going to do. We'll create some tributes to Pete that will, his legacy will live on forever within the annals of Navy athletics. I'll make sure that happens.
Chet, we'll make sure that next time we talk, we're talking about the wonderful things that are going on at the Naval Academy. We appreciate you spending the time with us this morning to reflect on Pete Medhurst. Thank you so much, Chet.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Chet Gladchuk, Navy Athletic Director, with us this morning here on GCR. Appreciate him taking the time to do that. Obviously they've found a lot of success at Navy over the years. No question about that. Hey, speaking of good people and things that we want to lift up, the Brigance Brigade is holding their winter soiree in February at Martin's West, February 21st. And, of course, the Brigance Brigade centers around the great O.J. Brigance, a Baltimore football legend, and the mission is to provide the quality of life for people that are dealing with ALS and their families by providing access to support services, needed equipment, and resource guidance. And the Winter Soiree, February 21st at Martin's West. You can get your tickets right now by going to brigancebrigade.org. Live music from Jimmy Charles. Of course, great food, dancing.
That's a relative of mine.
There are a lot of Charleses. Somewhere, somehow, I imagine you're probably related, but I know it's not a direct relation to Jimmy Charles. And obviously great food, and then the live auction. Just an awesome time to be had. Go to brigantsbrigade.org right now in order to get your tickets for the Brigance Brigade Foundation's Winter Soiree on February 21st. Speaking of events that are coming up quickly, the Birdland Caravan is literally right around the corner. It's next week, and joining us now to tell us a little bit more about that, talk about the Birds going into the season, one of the play-by-play voices of the Orioles, part of the Orioles broadcast team. He's Ben Wagner, and he's with us this morning here on GCR. Ben, it's Glenn and Stan. It's good to chat with you, man. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's always a good adrenaline rush this time of year when you're looking out the window. And most of the snow is gone, but you still feel that chill, and you feel much warmer when you can talk a little baseball.
There is that. We have to address it out of the chute, though. I think Orioles fans are a little bit worried that they might be learning that perhaps Anthony Santander was the player to be named later in the Ben Wagner trade, and that, with all due respect, it just seems
smells like that.
It seems like that might have been a little I don't want to say lopsided. I don't want to take a shot, Ben, but it just seems like maybe that wasn't a direct one-to-one type of situation.
I don't take it as a direct shot. I can tell you who has the finer feathers. And that would certainly be Ben Wagner. That came out way ahead on this deal.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that nonetheless. Hey, Ben, just getting into Baltimore last year and sort of learning not just the team, because obviously you had done a lot of Orioles games working for the Blue Jays over the years, but the community and the fan base. Can you kind of put into words what it was like dipping your toes here in Baltimore for the first time?
I went beyond dipping my toes into it. I went with a headlong dive, honestly. And part of my excitement in moving to the Baltimore area, being part of the Baltimore community, was to immerse myself in what I already knew, even growing up in the sticks of Indiana, that it was a great baseball town, a great baseball community, long time, passionate fan base, and a fan base that is now just salivating at the opportunity of success and long-time success that should be teed up here. So, and you know what, man, I'll tell you what, my first year living in the city has been incredible. Nothing short of just eye-popping in many different ways. And what I've learned and what I thought I could learn is blown me away and gone above and beyond. And it's meeting the people, especially the people around the ballpark that you get to interact with, and not working every game, but being there at almost every home game last year. Got to really interact with the fan base, hear their passion, be connected to that. So it's only magnified my excitement to get more involved in the years coming.
So now the real question is, Ben, how do we make sure that the next step is taken, right? Like that, I feel like that's the big story going into this year. Like we know now the Orioles have established they're good, they're competitive. How do they close the gap? Like what is it that you're interested in looking at in spring training, early on in the season, to tell you how ready they are to make that jump?
Yeah, I think if you look at the Orioles and you look at where they have been and where they want to go, there's certainly expectations now growing in the community or around this ball club, but there's a lot of expectation that's growing in that clubhouse. And it's going to start in less than a month when that first pitch of spring training is fired. And if you can have the consistency from players that have performed at a really high level, but also then see the growth, and you can see the growth from what has been acquired. You know, you're going to get a full year of Zach Eflin, for example, a great pickup at the trade deadline. You know you were going to have him for this year going in. You hope to have a full year of Jordan Westburg on the diamond as well, if he can stay healthy. You know, that to me is just like picking up somebody else, you know, an acquisition for your roster for the 162 that you've got. Tyler O'Neill is going to balance out that lineup a little bit on the right-handed side. He's going to have some pop. He's now got that shorter wall in left field. He and Ryan Mountcastle are probably going to have their own handshake when you look at the wall in left, and be right-handed power hitters, you know, that should hopefully add a little bit of pop, even though you're missing, and deservedly so, you're missing a lot of production from Anthony Santander. There are going to be guys out there that you can have say, all right, you can identify this guy should be an addition to do this, that, and the other. And if you get some consistency out of those players, plus then Adley Rutschman is going to be a major talking point, and how can Adley turn his season around? Be the first half Adley versus the second half Adley. That lineup becomes much more balanced in the productive lineup that you've become accustomed and expect from the Orioles.
Ben, two questions. Number one, do you think Mike Elias has one more rabbit to pull out of his hat, maybe a trade for a frontline pitcher? And two, do you see any real battles, roster battles? It looks like a pretty set team right now.
Yeah, Stan, good to hear from you too, man. Better than seeing you on Zoom. You get to chat one-on-one.
Yep.
I think Mike Elias certainly has something that's coming down the pipeline, if he can pull it off. You look at the history of that front office and how they identify certain players and the time to get things done. I do believe that there is something out there in the works that might define another storyline going into spring training.
Yep.
And in the middle of February, certainly, then you finally get to those full squad workouts, and then you get into games. The roster continues to evolve before you even break camp and head north. I really think that there are things that are still left on the to-do list for Mike Elias in that front office. I really, really do.
And battles right now, if you looked at, jotted it down on a pad and said first base, second base, third base, and went through the roster, do you see many battles? I mean, is Chase McDermott come to camp with an outside chance to make this team? Trevor Rogers?
I think, I like where you're going, and I like battles in spring training. I like, that early sense of competitiveness between younger players that are trying to make their mark, jump on the radar, so to speak, or a veteran that comes to camp on a minor league deal, looking for a chance to jump on that major league roster. Looking at it on paper, I don't think there are a lot of them. What you have are question marks in my mind. Yes, Chase McDermott certainly is that one of those guys that are going to make a big splash. But also, what's going to happen in the depth of the rotation when you talk about guys like Trevor Rogers, right? Is he going to take one more step forward? Is he going to compete perhaps and make a run at how this whole rotation balances out? What kind of role is Albert Suarez going to have, moving forward? I don't see a lot of hey, this is a question going into spring training that has to be answered in terms of a battle, because you can look at the five, right? You can look at the Eflin and Rodriguez. That's a 1-2 punch. You've got the stoic veteran in Charlie Morton, who was out there and inducing ground balls, soaking up innings, and a proven battler. You've got Sagano coming over. It just is signed as a free agent. What kind of option is he going to have? But certainly then going to be he's going to be in that rotation, definitely. Dean Kramer coming back for a healthy spring. I think those are kind of the five that you're leading on. And then the other question mark that I mentioned, position player-wise, you got to feel pretty good about your Orioles, right?
Yep.
Going Gunnar, Adley, Ryan O'Hearn, Tyler O'Neill, the top half of that lineup. Colton Cowser then mixing in too. He's a middle-of-the-order bat. And then balancing it out with Seti and Jackson Holiday, you'd expect to be the guy that's kind of inked in at second base moving in towards opening day, and Jordan Westberg over there at third base. So it looks like there's a lot of comfort in when you kind of map out your Baltimore Orioles moving towards opening day, which to me is the way that it should be. You want that consistency and you want that dependability in these players going into spring training.
Ben Wagner is with us here on GCR. The Birdland Caravan gets underway next Thursday. Now, all of the ticketed events are sold out, but there are lots of other events that are just open to the public, including a pop-up photo op next Thursday in Frederick County, one in Harford County next Friday, and then even on to the weekend, a pop-up photo op in Montgomery County on Saturday, and a meet and greet with Mr. Splash. You can find all those details at Orioles.com. Just search Orioles or Birdland Caravan and get all those details. The ticketed events sold out, but there is room for all these other events for you to just show up, come out, and be a part of the entire week. Ben, one of the questions that comes to mind, we'll get into this more. What do you think the reasonable expectations are for Felix Bautista in his return? And how quickly can he be Felix? But can you expect him to be the same guy? What do you make of that going into the season?
Hey, just one follow-up on those pop-ups, by the way.
Yes.
They will be determined locations, but pay attention to the Orioles' social media channels on X, on Instagram. They're going to splash out the day before in these communities where the direct pop-up photo ops will be, so you can meet and greet, the coaches that are going to be in town and a lot of the players. There are going to be over 10 players in town of the current active roster. So this is going to be an exciting time within the community. So again, pay attention to those social media channels towards the tail end of next week so you can get shoulder to shoulder with your Orioles you love. When you talk about Felix Bautista, you started to salivate, and Stan can remember this being at the ballpark last year towards those last couple of weeks and then right on the fringes of the playoffs beginning. You saw Felix Bautista not only around the ballpark more frequently, you saw him playing catch, you saw him doing some flat ground work, and then you saw the man go to the bullpen. And that mountain is a presence. And you could only wish, at that time that he was going to be available in the bullpen, but they played it right. They didn't rush him, even though he looked so good going out there. They let him rest, now build up through this time and get him ready. I think that they're going to be cautious and in a sense with Felix Bautista, maybe those first couple of outings, everything will be very, very restricted in spring training and very methodical on the approach. But once the gloves come off in the regular season, I think Felix Bautista will go after the toughest 3 outs in a ball game you can get. And those are the 3 outs in the ninth inning to lock up a win. And that is going to be such a massive addition to this bullpen and then calm things, right? When the ninth inning is unsettled, the rest of the game is unsettled because you're always playing the what if and trying to map things out. But you get Felix Bautista in there, you've got Yennier Cano coming in there, a great addition in my mind with Andrew Kittredge, who had a wire-to-wire healthy season last year in St. Louis, and is oozing with confidence right now. These are really, really valuable pieces. One, to line up to get you to that ninth inning, and then knowing you've got the consistency of one of the best closers in the game coming out to do it, and that's Felix.
Hey, Ben, one person we haven't mentioned yet, and Buck Showalter used to always warn us not to judge players in March or September. Cade Povich had a tremendous September run there. The games weren't incredibly critically important, but they were important for him to prove he belonged. What do you expect to see out of him and the opportunity in front of him?
Yeah, I think Cade, and you can take the little nuggets, right? Don't buy in all with the fool's gold that Buck would reference, right? And you can't fall in love with a guy in March, and you certainly can't do it in September because the games are just so different. Cade Povich, for me, took a couple of strides, but he also took a couple of bumps along the way, and he had to learn a little bit about himself. And I think, the thing is learning about how to use his repertoire, how to establish his pitches, but also I think he learned on the physical demands of what is different from such a calculated and very maneuvered, very meticulously life in the minor leagues where every pitch count and every inning is monitored and certain things before you give them free rein and you're going to go out there and pitch at the highest level in Major League Baseball. When you're in the big leagues with like no restrictions, you're out there to pitch to win ball games. He learned about the fatigue and what his body had to go through and how his arm had to respond. So all of those things with Cade became learning experiences. And I think you certainly could see the growth, could see the development. And I think that if we're in for a sophomore season with Cade that is going to only give him a reason to be a huge depth piece in the rotation. And I like a guy in the terms of Cade Povich and his makeup too. Fastball command, maybe not overpowering like you see some guys, but he's got the mix of the breaking ball in there and that big curveball that you can loop in. If he can establish that, I think he's going to be a really, really good depth piece jumping into that rotation. And you're going to need, beyond the 5 starters, you're going to really need 10 of these guys to get through the rigors of 162. So he's one of the guys that I'm certainly going to be interested in. I know I mentioned Rogers at the start of the conversation too, but these are a couple of guys that if this thing goes the way that the Orioles expect, they're going to be very valuable pieces in doing so.
Yeah, and one question I'm surprised that Glenn didn't follow up on the pop-ups. Are you going to be there to take pictures with fans too?
Most important part.
Most important part.
My number one duty will not be at the happy hour. My number one duty will be holding people's phones and cameras to make sure that they can document, their picture with Gunnar Henderson and company. And Colton Cowser. Actually, we know Colton Cowser is just going to grab somebody's phone and take selfies with them.
No question about it.
And ham it up.
Yeah, probably take some video, 100%. Might pass it around, right? Like that.
Yeah, of course.
That might be the case. Yeah, as Ben mentioned, make sure you are following and checking all of the Orioles social medias for that info about where these pop-ups are going to be all throughout the state next week as part of the Birdland Caravan, so that you can be there to meet players and meet folks with the team all throughout the course of the week. Ben Wagner, really appreciate taking the time for us this morning, man. Is there anything else we needed to talk about with the Caravan?
Holy smokes. It's going to be a host of individuals all over the place in the community making the trip. So, you know what? If you want to feel like summer, Mr. Splash will be dressed like the middle of July, not the middle of January or beginning of February here. So trust me, he'll have his nose painted up. The inflatables will be all the way inflated and ready for opening day. That is a given. And I think too, this is a really awesome opportunity. These kind of events where the players can get out and kind of see the day-to-day life of the fan base that they represent day on and day out, wearing that Baltimore or Orioles script across their chest. But it's also a chance for the fans in these events plus spring training to get to know the personalities of the players too. So this is a really big opportunity. If you've got it in your schedule, you've got the flexibility, get out there. And I know that the ticketed events sold out in a flash. I mean, the tickets were available and then they were gone. So that just tells you how excited Orioles fans are to be at these events. I think that same level of excitement will be at the pop-ups and certainly at the community events that I'm so grateful to be a part of coming up at the end of next week.
Glenn and I bought all the tickets up.
Right.
We partnered.
We're
making a fortune
on these
tickets.
About it. Ben, appreciate you taking the time for us this morning. Look forward to doing it during the season. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Dan. Be well.
Ben Wagner with us here on GCR.
Good dude.
Yeah, looking forward. I think he's going to be doing a little bit more here in his second season as his role is going to grow, it looks like, this year. And we're looking forward to seeing that. All right, we come back in. We'll get a tidbit. We'll get Tubular to wind things down for a Friday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. Learn more at DriveEasyMD.com.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov /vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
Winding down for a Friday edition of the program and winding down for the week here on GCR. Stan has been here all day.
This is a long show. I need to stay through the tidbit and the tubular.
Well, you don't have to. If you need to duck out, we'll
I mean,
allow
Stan,
you.
if you're trying to take my job, this is not.
That is a good point. Not a good sign. If 2 hours is not a good sign for.
Maybe we could split it up.
Oh, okay. Now this is
I could
an interesting
sleep in
theory.
and come in at 11.
You show up at 11. Griffin does the first
11:15.
half.
Do an hour.
11:30. 11.
Maybe 11:45.
11:30 would be perfect for me.
Appreciate him being here all day, as always. Tidbit is brought to you today by the CIAA Tournament. Griffin.
That's right. Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament to the CFG Bank Arena once again, February 25th through March 1st this spring. Get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. Again, the Food Lion CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament at CFG Bank from February 25th through March 1st.
All right, what you got?
Let's do. Where do I want to start? All right, the Terps played pretty well last night. They scored 62 points in the paint against Illinois. That is the most by any Big Ten team in a conference game over at least the last 20 years. Saw that from Jared Burson.
Again, it helps when
ate up.
It's a depleted front line, but again, both things can be true. It can both be true that Illinois wasn't at 100% last night, and it can also be true that a lot of teams would still be very, very dumb, and Maryland did exactly what they should do and did it quite well. It's not a backhanded compliment. It's the number of times in our lives that we've said, why in the world didn't you target this person when you knew this guy was out, right? And yet Maryland did exactly what they were supposed to do last night, and that is not a given in those situations.
And then we'll go ahead and do our do some more Hall of Famers here. Ichiro at 43 years old in 331 days, he became the oldest center fielder to ever start, the oldest player to ever start in center field. On September 18th in 2017, when he started in center field at about a month shy of his 44th birthday. So there's more.
Is the oldest Hall of Famer to ever play center field?
No, he's saying he's just the oldest player to ever start in center field.
Yes, he is. And then
I started center field in my Sunday softball team.
Yeah, I don't think we have stats for that, unfortunately.
Okay.
I think that's
I can prove it though.
Well, you're just trying to get us to take your word for it, Stan.
Stan, Glenn's not upset.
I have the box scores of those games.
Well, Stan, I don't know. Was there someone there?
Are you questioning my integrity?
I got to be honest with you. I think you're making this up.
Stan, are you upset that Ichiro only got he was not unanimously voted in? Yeah. Are you upset about that?
Am I upset? I knew there'd be.
Glenn's happy
I
he
knew
didn't go
there'd be.
Whoa.
I knew there'd be some jerk that wouldn't vote for him. You know.
I think what the way you're feeling is the way that I think he should have been, because I think it's crazy that someone would turn in a ballot. But yes, I don't care. I don't care.
I thought he was very funny about that. He wants to invite the guy over.
Yeah, right.
The guy over.
He is still obviously still going to be top 3 highest percentage ever to go into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm looking at the list now. 9 guys have had over 98%. Ichiro being the 9th.
Tom Seaver.
Over 98% of the votes. Tom Seaver is, in fact, on
obviously
over 98%.
Mariano Rivera.
100%.
Well, that's
Cal Ripken.
Yeah.
Cal Ripken.
I did plan this out before. Cal Ripken, yes.
Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn.
No Tony Gwynn. Only a measly 97.6%.
But Derek Jeter, of course.
Derek Jeter.
Stan Musial.
No Stan.
Ted Williams.
No Ted Williams.
Remember, like,
what are these people nuts?
I know that part I agree with. They are nuts.
Ted Williams and Stan Musial both only 93%.
Really?
But it used to be.
Ted Williams was a very
it used to. So Ken Griffey Jr. is on this list, right?
Yes, Griffey is.
It used to be that there was a regular voting block that said, "Come hell or high water, I'm not voting for someone the first time." Like there was like a 10% of the voting block, and then the internet came around and we made fun of those people and bullied them out of trying to prevent people from getting in on the first year.
You mean the internet wasn't around when Ted Williams and?
Yeah, believe it or not, not quite there.
We're looking for 3 more guys over 98.
George Brett.
George Brett did, in fact, 98.2% of the vote.
I feel like one of them was a pitcher, but I can't remember. It was a Greg
Sandy Koufax.
Not Sandy Koufax. One of them was.
Greg Maddux?
Nope, not Greg Maddux.
Nolan Ryan.
Maddux was only at 97.
Nolan Ryan.
Nolan Ryan had 98.8% of the
we're
vote.
Missing one
We
person?
are missing one more.
Willie Mays.
Not Willie Mays.
Hank Aaron.
Not Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron has the highest outside of my cutoff, my
So
arbitrary
dumb.
cutoff
It's
here,
just-
97.8.
Imagine not voting for Willie Mays or Hank Aaron.
9 guys did not vote for Hank Aaron.
What,
I can understand it.
Willie Mays,
I'm
23
guessing
people did not
they were
vote
all
for
white.
Yeah, you think? You think?
How about Mike Schmidt?
Not Mike Schmidt.
I didn't think so.
Stan defaulted to a nice white man. That's what he says.
Exactly.
We need to just pick a it wasn't Ryan Sandberg, I know that. Chipper Jones.
Not Chipper Jones.
Not Chipper
Only
Jones.
97.1% of the vote for Chipper.
Pathetic.
Catfish Hunter.
No Catfish
No more
Hunter.
pitchers, I think we said.
Yeah,
right?
No more pitchers.
No more pitchers.
Was he a pitcher, Catfish Hunter?
Paul Molitor.
No Paul Molitor.
Kirby Puckett.
No Kirby.
And we said it's got to be a white man, Stan.
Is it a white man?
He is a white man, yeah.
Yeah, how about that? This is Trump's America, Stan. Don't forget that. Robin Yount.
No.
Mike Piazza.
No pizza.
A white man. A white man who. A white man.
Mike Piazza's pretty
low, is what
Yeah.
you're saying? He wasn't all that impressive.
Mm-mm.
Carl Yastrzemski.
No Yaz.
Yes. Mickey Mantle.
No Mick Mantle.
I'm just curious.
Joe DiMaggio.
No Joe DiMaggio.
Yogi Berra.
No Yogi. I'm just gonna name the whole name everyone in the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
I mean, we're getting there.
Yogi's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
no.
Yogi-
He's
he's
not.
saying
He's
That's
not
right.
in
Yogi's not in the Hall
No,
of
he
Fame.
is in the Hall of Fame. He's saying we're going to name the entire Hall
Oh,
of Fame.
okay.
That's what he was.
Oh,
Yeah. And we might because we can't come up with this.
It's got to be somebody.
It's a white non-pitcher. That's
Yeah.
what we've got going
white
for us.
non-pitcher.
And it's not Jeff Bagwell because he didn't get in. Craig Biggio, it's not. I know it's not. Jeez. White non-pitcher.
Was Willie McCovey white?
What are we doing?
I don't want to give hints yet. I mean, I don't know. Maybe no.
Okay, do we have to go back a ways?
We do have to go back quite a ways.
Duke Snyder.
Not Duke.
Mel Ott.
No Malott.
Babe Ruth.
No
Oh,
Babe
that
Ruth.
would have been a good one.
Same class as Babe Ruth.
Same class as like Rogers Hornsby.
Not Rogers.
Rocky Calavito.
Not Rocky.
This goes back to
Honus Wagner.
Nope.
Ty Cobb.
That is the right. Ty Cobb. There you go. 98.2%.
Well, to be fair, he was such a good guy. They had to
he
make
was
sure
a
they
great
got him
guy.
in. Just a swell fella, Ty Cobb.
Well, he did get in at
Jeez.
98% of the vote. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we named just about everybody with 97 and 96.
By
as
the
well.
way,
Randy Johnson,
well,
97%.
When we started talking to Ben Wagner,
Yes.
you were telling a story about somebody that was related, because you were sort of leading into it and say it was before we talked to Ben Wagner.
Before we talked to Ben Wagner.
There wasn't a whole lot of time.
There was something
did
about
I did a
people that
commercial
were
for the
related to
Brigance
some-
Brigade.
The
People
point
who
I
were
was making
related,
is
okay.
one time when I was a kid, it was like Hubert Humphrey was the vice president of the United
Okay.
States, and the game of the week came to Washington, which it never did.
Okay.
Saturday game of the week, and he came into the booth, and the Senators he played for the Indians for a little while. Bob Chance, his name was Fat Chance, because he was very heavy and he was black, and Hubert Humphrey comes in. And he goes, this guy, and he's playing for the Senators, and he really wasn't very good, but he had a big swing. And he goes, boy, he's really got a big swing. He goes, See any relationship to Dean Chance with the Angels? And Dean Chance was white, and Bob Chance was black.
Well, they could have been.
That's the vice president of the United States.
Could have been. Could have been. You never know.
Doesn't see. Yeah.
Right. Maybe they have different. I don't know.
You can use that story as your own.
Thank you. All the years down the road, I'm going to say, I remember when. Hubert Humphrey. I'm going to remember that well. All right, we good? Let's get tubular.
Let's get tubular, man.
That's what Stan wanted to do.
Tubular. Let's get it going, man.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
All right, here's what's coming up this weekend, totally tubular-wise. Nothing in particular this evening, but again, overnight tonight, 3:30 a.m. tomorrow, the Australian Open Women's Championship, Arena Sabalenka and Madison Keys. Tomorrow, college hoops, ESPN Plus, UMBC Vermont at 1, Holy Cross Loyola at 2. I'm going to go over there, actually. I'm taking the kids and my dad. We're going to check that one out. The first Coppin Morgan game of the season is tomorrow at 4 o'clock on ESPN Plus. Mount St. Mary's at home at 4 against Manhattan. That's about it for tomorrow. That's about it. On Sunday, college hoops, Maryland, Indiana at noon on CBS. And then, of course, the Maryland women at home against number 1 UCLA at 2. Unfortunately, injury-riddled. They actually put up a really good fight against Ohio State last night, but ultimately lost. And no Shai Sellers, no Bree McDaniel. It's just been a tough turn. But, yeah, the number 1 team in the country in College Park. Sunday at 2 on NBC. Also, the first Army-Navy game of the season up at Army, 3:30 on CBS Sports Network, and the women's game at 1 on CBS Sports Network. Imagine they'll do a nice tribute in there for Pete Medhurst as well. And, of course, the conference championship games on Sunday, Commanders-Eagles at 3 on Fox, Bills-Chiefs 6:30 on CBS, and the Australian Open men's final at 3:30 a.m. on Sunday, Alex Zverev and Yannick Sinner. Non-sports.
There's
everything else. Go to GlennClarkRadio.com. Find it
there. If anyone's into Star Trek, there's a Star Trek movie with Michelle Yeoh as the main character on Paramount Plus. Star Trek Section 31. I know you're a big Star Trek guy, so you'll be tuning in.
You know what's funny? The two movies. I remember the two movies. I was never a Star Trek person, and then those two movies. The one that had the Green Girl in it, and the one that those two movies. What's his face was in them? There was a Zachary Quinto, right?
Patrick Stewart?
No. This is the modern. There were two modern Star Trek movies they put out. I want to say like 2010 and 2013, something around
2009. Chris Pine and
Chris Pine was definitely in them.
Simon Pegg was in it. Zoe Saldana was in it.
Yeah, they were both really
Shatner,
good.
and what was the second guy's name? The old British guy.
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart.
Correct.
And Chris Pine. Those are the three I know.
Yeah. Look, I was just never really a Star Trek person, of any sort.
I watched the series, the original.
And then 2009 and 2013, they put out these movies, and I was like, wow, these are really, really good. Like, they hooked me for a minute. But not that I went back and watched old Star Treks or anything like that.
That one is streaming on Paramount Plus, so anyone can go check that out. The Wild Robot is streaming now on Peacock.
Is it really?
Yeah. Yes.
I think my kids just went to the cheap movie theater to see it 3 days ago.
I mean, there's nothing beats a theater experience, not a whole lot else today. New episode of Severance on Apple TV Plus. Timothy Chalamet hosting SNL tomorrow
as musical guest.
Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan.
You assume.
I wonder if Dylan will come in.
It's a good. That seems like he would. It seems
only
like he would
because it's the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, maybe.
Year,
Like it would seem like Bob Dylan would want to be too cool for that. Like, nah.
Yeah, but they could have some fun with that.
I would agree.
The Saturday Night Movie is also coming out Saturday night on Netflix, or not coming out, streaming.
It's streaming
on Netflix Saturday. CNN's also doing a Kobe Bryant documentary, like docu-series that starts Saturday night as well. And that's it. Stephen Colbert apparently is doing a show after the AFC Championship on CBS. So he's going to have Deion Sanders and Kane Brown on
they are
on
plugging
Sunday
Captain
nights.
America.
Oh, they are?
That's exactly.
Coach Prime.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Actor, coach.
Makes sense.
Maybe an
All
NFL
right,
coach.
very good, very good. Well, we'll see. There is still a job available. As
you could take the Saints job. That's right.
Everybody's losing their minds about the.
What if the Saints just don't have anyone fire?
They just don't hire a coach.
No
Everybody's losing their minds about the Liam Cohen thing. I'm like, is Liam Cohen this desirable? I had never heard of this guy.
It's also Trent Baalke is so undesirable, I guess.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that.
I guess there's also something to be said that
But
he had a job for 8 years.
It's also kind of crazy that the guy literally told the Bucs, yeah, I'll come back. I'll take your job. You got it. When he was still negotiating for the Jaguars job.
Well, maybe the Jags were like, we're not firing Baalke, and then he was like, all right, well, I'm going back to Tampa,
Maybe
and then they called him.
Handled the interview. That's what it sounded like.
Man.
And then word got back to the owner that
I hear this just seems like they've created a lot of buzz for what would be otherwise like a completely nondescript hire. Like if 1 week ago they had hired Liam Cohen, we would all have been like, okay. Instead, they got it.
He did some pretty good things.
Well, yeah,
with
I'm not being dismissive of it, but
you're being disrespectful of Liam Cohen.
The bigger deal is
that's
Trent
because
Baalke,
he's Jewish.
Is that what you think it is?
No, because
by the way, I also
C-O-E-N.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that that was a thing that was floating around the internet yesterday. That they were like, did Liam Cohen satisfy the minority hiring? And then everybody was like, no, he's Catholic. Like, what are you talking about? All right. Yeah, that'll do it. Thanks today
really
to.
Can I throw in a movie?
Sure.
That was really a brilliant small movie.
Yeah.
You know Jesse Eisenberg.
We just watched it. Griffin and I watched it last Friday.
Oh, a real
pain? After the show.
Fantastic.
After the show last Friday, we watched it.
Very good.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know what I knew very little about the movie, and so I just.
You know who the woman was? That was Jennifer Grey.
Was it really?
Yeah. The cute. The older
one. Was on the tour with
yeah,
them.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was Jennifer Grey, to be honest with you, at all.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Ferris Bueller's older sister.
It was.
I thought Kieran McCulkin was.
Well, Kieran Culkin is phenomenal.
Yeah, he
but
was great.
Basically, just sort of being
himself.
Yeah, or
like an asshole.
What was his character in
in
the HBO show Succession? Yes. Thank you. Like kind of being that guy, like just sort of all over the place, like loose cannon, just an extension really of that, and nailed it. And yet did it in a sweeter. Obviously, there was nothing redeemable about him, that character in Succession. Obviously, way more There was a lot more redeemability about his character in A Real Pain.
He was very vulnerable.
Yes, but still, like loose cannon, wild card.
I love the way it ended. I thought it was really.
It was great.
It
was a great film. I agree with that. And it's the only of the Oscar-nominated films that I've seen. The list came out this week.
Is he nominated for an Oscar?
He is.
As supporting actor?
Supporting actor, 100%. All right. Thanks to Stan. Thanks to Ben Wagner. Thanks to Chet Gladchuk. Thanks to J.J. Cooper and to Bo. We'll get it all up in the greatest hits section of the
Can You Take Me Higher?
tab at GlennClarkRadio.com. Don't forget the Bat Around tomorrow morning with Paul, and then we'll be back, of course, on Monday. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Live Casino and Hotel, Cruise Maryland, Crown Trophy, Easy Pass, Royal Farms, the CIAA Tournament, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, the Costa Sin, MSAA, Maryland Sports, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com.
And got that interview I did with
which one? Mary Drexler
yes. will be up in the next couple days, and also did Chris Corman from the Baltimore Banner, the sports editor of the Baltimore Banner.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass.
You're welcome.
Have a great weekend. Go Maryland basketball. Go all the other local hoops
Towson,
teams.
of course.
Towson. What? Wait, they don't play till Monday, right?
They're not playing Saturday?
Yeah, they play. They play Northeastern on Monday, right? Yeah. So do not go Towson.
Well, Thompson Maryland game Sunday.
Towson women play tonight.
Noon.
So. Okay. All right, whatever. Or can we go? Duke sucks.